Chapter 1135. Li Hailu was right. Other than Master Bai, there was no one else in the courtyard who had such an aura since they were young. The aide-de-camp was stunned. Normally he would fight back. Tyrantly gritted his teeth. He must have used his connections to get in. How dare he return Master Bai's hand? Have you figured out your military rank? Unfortunately, Bai Juan did not compete with him in terms of military rank. He kicked him fiercely. He was like a young warlord who had yet to grow up. A loud bang was heard. The adjutant was kicked onto the dining table. Bai Juan was ruthless. He did not even want his coat. He turned around and looked at Mrs. Lin. But his words were directed at Li Hailu. Hailu, which fucking family does this adjutant belong to? The Lin family. You're definitely asking the obvious. Fight me. Bai Juan chuckled softly. Auntie Lin, you're here too. This adjutant of the Lin family is really well found. He dares to beat up anyone he sees, right? Uncle Zhang, call my grandpa and tell him that if my grandpa gives him the position that cousin Lin wants, he won't have a grandson like me. This little gangsterly interrupted and said, that's not necessary, right? Bai Juan ignored him and continued. By the way, tell my grandfather that in the future, I will fucking beat up the Lin family every time I see them. Their entire family will bully me because I don't have a father or mother. This time, Adjutant Zhang was the one who hesitated. Young master, who would dare to bully you like this in the courtyard? The old chief doesn't like it when people mention this. You're obviously trying to infuriate the old chief. Juan, this is all a misunderstanding. How could Auntie bully you? Mrs. Lin wanted to explain. I'll change this adjutant later. Don't you think it's not good to alarm the old master over such a small matter? Bai Juan smiled again. Auntie Lin, when you were about to kick him out just now, why didn't you say that this was a small matter? If someone treated Lin Ziwen the same way today, you definitely wouldn't say it was a small matter. Little Juan, you brought back a child from the mountains. Auntie saw that she was really uneducated and didn't have any control when she ate. So I just wanted to control her. Is this worth getting angry over? Bai Juan's eyes darkened. I call you auntie because of Uncle Lin. Do you really think that you're my auntie? A mistress dares to say that others have no manners? These words were the eternal pain in Madame Lin's heart. But because of the Lin family's power, no one dared to mention it. In fact, Ms. Lin had indeed been promoted later on. The previous wife of the Lin family was the one who was magnanimous. However, she had thought things through and decided not to go abroad with this marriage in mind. When Mrs. Lin heard this, her face turned red and white. Juan, you're almost done. Bai Juan's expression was cold. Uncle Zhang, go and call Grandpa immediately. Yes. Deputy Zhang, you finally understand. If you didn't make this call today, young master would have directly destroyed the canteen. Mrs. Lin hurriedly reached out and pulled Adjutant Zhang. Just because of a little country bumpkin, the relationship between the two families is ruined. Little Juan is a child. How can Adjutant Zhang not understand? Vice Commander Zhang's mouth opened wide. No wonder young master was so angry. This woman really had a bad mouth. When Mrs. Lin saw that she had stabilized Vice Commander Zhang, she turned around and continued to say to Bai Juan, Little Juan, look at Auntie Lin's body. It's all because of this little country bumpkin. Auntie Lin didn't say anything to you, right? Let's forget about this matter. Let's not alarm the old man. Don't alarm my grandfather? Sure. Bai Juan walked in front of Vice Commander Zhang and took the pistol hanging on his belt with a snap. He pointed it directly at Mrs. Lin's head. I'll shoot you, and we'll forget about this matter. His ferocious look gave Vice Commander Zhang a shock. Young master, go to the side. Bai Juan's eyes were only on Mrs. Lin. Tell me, I'll shoot you, okay? Mrs. Lin had never seen such a scene before. Her legs were weak, and her entire body was stiff. She didn't even dare to move. How could a child take out a gun just like that? This was not something a child would do at all. Master Li watched from the side without blinking. He sniffed the snot that was about to come out. He thought to himself, fuck, his brother was really cool. Since I can't forget about this matter even if I shoot you, why can't you just bully my child? Bai Juan asked Mrs. Lin. No one dared to go up and stop him. Mrs. Lin's voice was trembling. Little Juan, didn't Auntie already admit her mistake? Put the gun back. Be careful not to misfire. This is Auntie's fault this time. Bai Juan sneered and returned the gun to Vice Commander Zhang. Go and make the call now. Don't let me really shoot. Vice Commander Zhang felt that he should indeed make the call. Young Master was really angry this time. How could he not be angry? Bai Juan had never thought that he would see such a miserable little baldy. When he woke up, Auntie Wang even said that a Jew had gone out to buy breakfast for him. The child was reluctant to wake him up, and did not bring any money with her. Bai Juan was already worried. Before he could put on his clothes, he heard little tyrant panting, and telling him how a Jew was bullied. As soon as he arrived at the canteen, he saw that his child was covered in residue. The small sportswear she wore when she went out was dirty, and she was even dragged away. However, young Master Bai could no longer remember that little Baldy actually knew martial arts. He just felt that his child had to be pointed at and scolded when she came out to buy breakfast. It was also because she had lived in the Bai family for 2 days. What the fuck was this world? Bai Juan's eyes were red with anger. He walked toward little Baldy, and wiped the child's face with a tissue. Little brother, I didn't hit anyone. This was the first sentence the child said when she saw him. The second sentence was, I bought you 10 of your favorite tea eggs, and put them on the table. I thought that if you didn't come, I would spar with them. Actually, it was just a change of adjectives. The meaning of the little guy's attempt to cover up was particularly obvious. Bai Juan found it funny and distressing when he heard this. If you want to spar in the future, spar. Don't worry so much. Little Baldy tilted her big head cutely. Little brother had clearly told her not to always beat people up. Why did he change his mind now? Bai Juan looked at the redness on the back of the child's hand, and knew that it was burned by something. His heart was burning. He asked Li Hailu, who was beside him, What's going on? Auntie Lin spread it with a wave of her hand. Li Hailu glanced at Mrs. Lin, who was already scared out of her wits. This woman is really the most disgusting woman I've ever seen. She was clearly the one who did it. She just said that a Jew did it. How shameless. Chapter 1136. Li Hailu's voice was loud to begin with, but after he shouted like this, the people who came to buy food all knew what was going on. They turned around and looked at Bai Juan, who was protecting little Baldy. No wonder the kid from the Bai family was so angry. Mrs. Lin had really gone too far this time. Bullying a child was at the very least a personality problem. Xiaofeng followed his mother to buy breakfast. When he saw that his brothers were all there, and when he heard Li Hailu shout, he gave up his usual image as a noble young master. He ran over and asked Bai Juan, Are you okay? I'm fine. Bai Juan looked at Mrs. Lin. It's the Lin family who are in trouble. Xiaofeng had been with Bai Juan since he was young. In the military compound, the reason why people did not dare to provoke these two families was because they were very close. Mom. Compared to Li Hailu, Xiaofeng's voice was not that loud, but it made Mrs. Lin even more afraid. Someone is bullying Bai Juan. Come and take a look. Mrs. Xiao walked over. She was wearing a pure white business suit. She didn't look like someone who had given birth to a child at all. Her temperament was particularly good. She worked in education, and came from a scholarly family. From the beginning she didn't like Mrs. Lin. If it weren't for the old chief, she wouldn't even greet Mrs. Lin when she saw her. Now that she heard her son say that Bai Juan had been bullied, when her eyes swept over Mrs. Lin, they became more and more emotionless. What's going on? Mrs. Lin wanted to explain, but she was stopped by Mrs. Zhao's words. I'm asking Xiao Juan, not you. Auntie Xiao, I'll settle this matter. Bai Juan didn't even say anything, because he felt that there was no need to say anything about what had happened. When Mrs. Xiao heard this, she knew that even she couldn't interfere. This child. Hailu, go and tell Master Li to fry as many fried dough sticks as he can. Bai Juan's voice was indifferent. Our child can eat so much. I can buy as much for her as she eats. We're just buying things. Do we have to be discriminated against just because we buy more? How can the food be scattered by someone? As he spoke, Bai Juan looked in Mrs. Lin's direction. You'd better not go out these few days. I can't guarantee that I won't splash you with hot soy milk when you go out. Or you will think that I treat an elder like this, right? That's even easier. Hailu Xiaofeng. In the future, no matter whether the Lin family is male or female, including Lin Ziwen, beat them up every time you see them. Bai Juan. Mrs. Lin couldn't find a way out of this embarrassing situation, but what she was most worried about was what would happen next. Auntie made a mistake. You should come at Auntie. Why did you let them hit one? Bai Juan looked at her expressionlessly. Because I am a child with no upbringing. I will do whatever I like. If you can bully my child, why can't I make an example of your child? Your child is a treasure, but mine isn't? You're just bullying our Lin clan because we're not as powerful as your Bai clan, right? Mrs. Lin was also confused with anger. Her mouth was trembling. Why don't you see how much our Lin family has helped your Bai family get to where they are today? When Bai Juan heard this, he smiled. So it's all because of the Lin family's help that our Bai family has today. You should say this to my grandfather. It's best if you call Grandpa Lin and Uncle Lin over and ask them why your Lin family helped our Bai family. You're really used to being left alone. I don't want to talk to you. Mrs. Lin turned her face away, thinking that since old Chief Bai had already been alerted, she could just fight to the end. Their Lin family had taken a bullet for the Bai family. Xiao Lin's mother, who was at the side, originally wanted to persuade Bai Juan not to show off so much at such a young age. Now that she heard Mrs. Lin's words, she could not help but shake her head. The Lin family had really courted death by marrying such a daughter-in-law into the family. The other two daughters-in-law, who were often with Mrs. Lin and had just entered the family, did not know the twists and turns of this matter. They only felt that Bai Juan was unreasonable. That's enough. Sister Lin just said one more sentence. Shouldn't the elders teach the younger generation to listen? Chief Lin has taken a bullet for others before, right? Isn't that so? Now someone is trying to be ungrateful, hee. Not to mention Xiao Lin's mother. Even little Gangster Li felt that these women were a little retarded. No wonder his father had taught him since he was young that he had to marry a virtuous wife, and not just for looks. Little Gangster Li had been conflicted in the past. He liked good-looking girls so much, but his father had denied his only criteria for choosing a girlfriend. Wasn't this forcing him to turn gay? He now understood that in the future, he really had to look at not just the face, but also the brain. Otherwise, he would not even know when he would die. Bai Juan was even more direct. He first carried little Baldy up, then said to Vice Commander Zhang, "Remember all their names." Hey, you really scared us to death. Isn't he just a child? Can he really be the head of the Bai family? Even if old Chief Bai comes, he has to care about his face. This child really needs to be disciplined. He's getting more and more lawless. Xiao Lin listened to this series of attacks and raised his head again. He looked at the tall and straight figure not far away. Without thinking, he walked over and said to Mother Xiao, "Mom, tell Dad and Grandpa that if Bai Juan wants to fight, I'll fight with him. I'll fight with him too." Little Gangster Li also ran over. There was a layer of sweat on his forehead. Those who don't like Bai Juan are going against the Li family. Bai Juan stood in the middle of the two people. He was like a pine tree with delicate features. He was even holding the soft little Baldy in his hand. Mother Xiao looked at this scene and seemed to see the future of the military compound. These children seemed to be even more united than the previous generation. Outsiders always said that the reason why the Chinese were sometimes cowardly was because before others could attack, their own family had already destroyed their own people. But now, Mrs. Xiao felt a kind of pure brotherly spirit from these juniors, although they still looked a little immature and arrogant. But it was better than their brothers being submissive when they were in trouble. Children raised by soldiers should be so brave. The two who spoke did not think much of it. Mrs. Lin still knew some things. When she heard that the Bai, Li, and Xiao families were going to join forces, her face turned pale in an instant. No matter how she thought about it, she could not understand. She just wanted to teach a little Baldy a lesson. How did it end up like this? After Mrs. Lin returned home, she was nervous for a long time. Seeing that there was nothing strange at home, she smiled again. She knew it. It was just a few children. What kind of trouble could they cause? Unfortunately, she had underestimated Master Bai's planning ability. Chapter 1137. You won't be of any use if you go home like this. Bai Juan hugged little Baldy, and applied medicine to the child. His eyes revealed a depth that did not match his age. Shaolin was smart to begin with. You mean we need to use some tricks? Yes. Bai Juan's voice was very calm. I'll take care of the Lin family. Hailu, go home first and bring some steamed buns that Andy Wong made. Don't go out even if Uncle Li knocks on the door. Insist on not eating in the afternoon. Just say that you have no appetite, because you were angered by the Zhang family. Then, tell Uncle Li that the Zhang family has been in contact with the Sun family in the south recently, and wants to abolish some veteran subsidies. Fuck, how do you know such a thing? Master Li was simply impressed. He could only hear these words from his father and the others. How did Master Bai know? However, his father hated it when people were harsh on veterans. Bai Juan lowered his eyes and blew on little Baldy's hand. Seeing the child shrink back, his hand also tightened. This matter won't be over just like that. Shaolin understood Bai Juan's meaning, and did not continue to speak. He brought Master Li out of the door. Since noon that day, the Xiao and Li families have been anxious. Especially the two grandmas. What's going on? Why isn't he eating anything? Master Li's grandmother once had a military rank on her shoulder. Usually, her grandson ate as if he was fighting a war. Why was he so listless today? Grandma Li's first reaction was to ask Master Li's father. Tell me, did you hit Hailu again? How would I dare to hit your precious grandson? Master Li's father was also puzzled. What's going on with this kid today? What is he doing? Grandma Li slapped the back of her son's head. How can you talk about your son like that? Why don't you go up and ask? Master Li's father thought that he had to ask. If he did not ask clearly, the Li family would not be able to have peace. When there was a knock on the door, Master Li was eating meat buns in the sea. When he heard his father's voice, he choked so much that he drank 3 mouthfuls of mineral water before he patted his chest with all his might. Phew, I almost choked to death. While muttering, Li Hailu quickly packed the rest of the buns in a plastic bag and stuffed them into the drawer. He even fanned himself with a fan. After the smell was gone, he opened the door from the inside. As soon as Li Bawang's father came in, he saw his son leaning against the wall and imitating Lin Daiyu. It seemed that there was something wrong with his son. You don't have a fever? Li Hailu's father looked Li Hailu up and down. Why is your face so red? That was because he choked on water. Afraid that he would be discovered, Li Hailu immediately changed the topic. First, he talked about what had happened this morning from beginning to end. Then he talked about the harsh veteran. Li Hailu's father immediately slammed the table and stood up. Come, follow me back to the army. Master Li knew that Bai Juan's method was effective, so he finally didn't have to pretend anymore. He went downstairs and began to wolf down the food. Grandma Li was a sensible person. She knocked on the table and asked him, You tell Grandma the truth. Did that brat from the Bai family tell you to do this today? Yes. When Grandma Li saw that her grandson admitted it so readily, she was stunned at first. Then she heard Li Hailu say, When I came, Bai Juan said that if Grandma asks, I should tell the truth. He said that you feel sorry for the children. This little fox. Grandma Li smiled. Aren't you afraid that you will be betrayed when the time comes? When Li Hailu said this, he had to talk to Grandma properly. Grandma, first of all, I don't think Bai Juan did anything wrong. He can't be compared to me. I have a father and a mother. You and Grandpa often accompany me. He only has Grandpa Bai left. Grandpa Bai still stays in the army all year round and doesn't come back. Now that he finally has a younger sister, who helped him go out to buy breakfast, she was pointed at the nose and called a country bumpkin. Who could tolerate this? I can't control the situation like Bai Juan. But what I admire the most is his ability to protect his own people. Also, although Bai Juan is a little fox, he won't betray me. Grandma, do you still remember that one winter when we went to play, the river froze? I was playful and fell into the ice hole. If Bai Juan hadn't grabbed me and didn't let go, I would have lost my life. At that time, everyone else had run away, leaving only him and Shaolin. We were young at that time, not even 4 years old. Shaolin was scared silly at that time. He kept pointing at me and crying. Only Bai Juan didn't let go even when the ice was about to crack. Grandma, you also know that I don't have many things in my heart. I think this is quite good. Let Baijuan worry about those things. I will fight wherever he tells me to fight. With him standing behind me and commanding me, I am relieved. He is also good to our Li family. He never thinks that we are barbaric, unlike some people who show that they respect our military achievements. But in fact, they always laugh at my wild personality. Baijuan said that it would be good if a person like me entered the army. I will also be a general in the future. Me, Shaolin, and Baijuan, the three of us will always be the Iron Triangle. This sentence is never said casually. After little gangster Li finished speaking, he began to eat the white rice in his bowl in big mouthfuls. Grandma Li, on the other hand, was unable to come back to her senses for a long time because of these words. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't this what they wanted? After 100 years, her grandson would be able to protect the country, and someone would be able to protect her grandson. They were also relieved that these three children could be so well. Although the situation on Shaolin's side was different, the result was the same. The two women who said that Baijuan didn't know what was going on, but their husbands were already being interviewed. In the afternoon, old Master Bai rushed back from outside the city. His expression was very bad. Baijuan, who allowed you to pull out your gun? Kneel down first. Baijuan was still holding little Baldy in his hand. He raised his eyes to look at old Master Bai. Grandfather, go and call the Lin family over first. I'll kneel again. You're going to anger me to death. Old Master Bai put on his military cap. Little Baldy was originally asleep, but she instantly opened her eyes. Knowing that the situation was not right, she immediately rolled down from the sofa. Grandfather Bai, I'll kneel for little brother. When old Master Bai saw the child, the anger in his heart subsided. Why are you kneeling? Let your brother kneel. Little brother pulled out his gun for me. Little Baldy's little palm was scalded. When she fell asleep, Baijuan had just wrapped a white bandage around her. Now she was like a little panda. I shouldn't have stayed in the Bai family for free. This way, others won't say anything about me, and little brother won't get angry. If little brother doesn't get angry, Grandpa Bai won't get angry. A Jew has already decided. When little brother falls asleep in a while, I will go and find those people to settle the score. I will directly beat them up. In the future, I will settle my own matters on my own, and not implicate little brother. I just don't know why, but in the end the person who was coaxed became me. Speaking of this, little Baldy frowned in distress and said seriously, in the future, I must get rid of the habit of taking an afternoon nap. It's too much of a delay in business. Vice Commander Zhang, your so-called business is to coax the young master, and then beat people up? Chapter 1138. When old Master Bai heard little Baldy's words, he immediately frowned. A Jew tell Grandpa, who said that our little Jew was a freeloader? An ant. Little Baldy used her little claws to tug at the corner of old Master Bai's clothes. She even said that I was a little brother. At that time, I really wanted to beat her up. In the past, senior brother always said that the women at the foot of the mountain were tigers. Only now do I know what a tiger looks like. I don't think I'm wrong, but Grandpa Bai said that if you want us to kneel, we will kneel. Woolly Buddha said that this is called filial piety. Old Master Bai was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and reached out to touch little Baldy's big head. Our little Jew is more sensible than some adults. As he said that, old Master Bai looked at Baijuan. You are older than a Jew. As an older brother, there is nothing wrong with you protecting her. But Baijuan, remember, don't let anyone in the family see you pull out the gun. The gun in your hand is to protect your family. Even if one day you want to use it, you have to do it where she can't see you. Understand? Yes, Grandpa, Baijuan said as he bent his legs. This time, I was too impulsive. I will handle it better in the future. A Jew is still young. Baijuan brought her back. I can promise Grandpa that I will follow Grandpa's instructions in the future. But I will definitely take revenge for Ajiz's grievances. Old Master Bai walked over his military uniform straight. Of course we have to take revenge. It's wrong for us to pull out the gun, but I won't do it if someone says that about my grandson. Chief. Auntie Wang saw that the atmosphere was better, so she dared to speak. She whispered in old Master Bai's ear. Little Aju is a girl. Old Master Bai was stunned. What did you say? Little Aju is a girl. Auntie Wang repeated. Old Master Bai immediately turned his head to look at little Baldy, who was kneeling with Bai Xuan. The child was still looking at him with her big round eyes. Even her head tilted to the left, as if she was saying, "What's wrong? She thinks she is a boy." Auntie Wang continued to whisper to Old Master Bai. After taking a deep breath, Old Master Bai immediately picked up the child. Little Aju, be good. Let your brother kneel. He has rough skin and thick flesh. It's fine for him to kneel for a while. My skin is rough, and my flesh is thick too. In order to show off his figure, little Baldy even lifted up his small arms. They were round and cute. The Bai family had only one heir for generations, and most of them were sons. When Bai Juan's parents were still alive, Old Master Bai wanted them to quickly give birth to a caring little granddaughter. But the world was unpredictable. Now that his granddaughter had finally come, she was so obedient. The main reason was that she was more sincere than anyone else. How could Old Master Bai not like it? He couldn't wait to get the Lin family to come over and ask them face to face what was going on. Vice Commander Zhang, get everyone over here. Yes. When she received the news, Mrs. Lin was still playing cards in her room. That little bit of uneasiness in the morning had long disappeared for her. It was impossible for the Bai family to break off their relationship with the Lin family for a child from the countryside. Deputy Zhang did not invite Mrs. Lin first, but Mrs. Lin's husband Lin Feng, who had once worked under Old Master Bai. Lin Feng had just returned from the army, so he did not know what had happened. When he entered the Bai family, he saw Bai Xuan kneeling on the ground. He was immediately shocked. What's going on? One had to know that Old Master Bai doted on little Xuan the most. Not to mention kneeling, he had never even beaten or scolded him. In addition, when people saw Bai Xuan in all aspects, they would give him a thumbs up. Why did he suddenly make him kneel in the hall? Old Master Bai did not play any tricks with Lin Feng. Bai Xuan, tell your Uncle Lin what's going on. Bai Xuan straightened his back, and his voice was indifferent. The Lin family scolded a Jew for being a country bumpkin from the village. They mocked her for being able to eat, and said that she was a pig. They even spilled the soy milk she bought on her body. They even said that it was a Jew who was rude. Uncle Lin, since you're here today, let me ask you a question. Did our Bai family rely on your Lin family to get to where we are today? Your wife said that the Lin family is indebted to the Bai family. If it weren't for the Lin family, there would be no Bai family. If it weren't for Grandpa Lin taking the bullet from my grandfather, our Bai family would have been finished long ago. As soon as Lin Feng heard the first sentence, he subconsciously looked at his old chief. When he finished listening to everything, his heart thumped heavily. Old Master Bai also did not expect things to be like this. The expression on his face also turned cold. Lin Feng, since your wife brought this up, then let's have a good talk. Go. Bring Madame Lin here. When Lin Feng heard Old Master Bai use the word invite, he knelt on the ground with a thud. Deputy Zhang was waiting for Old Master Bai's words. In less than 5 minutes, he brought him to the Bai family. Lin Feng tried his best to explain to Old Master Bai. After all, if not for the help of the Bai family, just based on the Lin family's background, they would be nothing. Grandpa Lin was Old Master Bai's adjutant a long time ago. At that time, the Lin family was so poor that they had nothing. Old Master Bai valued Grandpa Lin's honesty and mentioned him again and again. It was indeed true that Grandpa Lin took the bullet for Old Master Bai. However, the adjutant was supposed to take the bullet for the chief. This was his duty. If it weren't for Old Master Bai, Grandpa Lin wouldn't have been able to stay in the army, let alone have a meteoric rise in the future. Outsiders didn't know about these things, but the older generation knew about them. However, these old leaders only told their descendants. Therefore, Mrs. Lin didn't know that she had just heard a little bit of news, and then made up a version with her own imagination. She thought that the Lin and Bai families were so close, because Grandpa Lin had saved Grandpa Bai's life. In fact, it was the complete opposite. For so many years, the Lin family had to rely on the Bai family for everything. Mrs. Lin was also a smart person. When she heard that Old Master Bai was looking for her, she began to cry before she even entered the door. The content of her cry was roughly, The two families have been in a relationship for so many years. Even if Bai Juan is looking for my old master, he shouldn't treat me like this. When Lin Feng heard this from inside, he wished that he could immediately rush to the door and shut this woman's mouth. When Mrs. Lin came in and saw that Lin Feng was also kneeling there, she thought that she was doing him a favor. "Old chief, how did our Lin family let down your Bai family? I admit that my words today were a little too much, but after all, my old master is still here. You can't just forget about your old friends, right?" After old master Bai heard these words, he smiled coldly. "I finally know why my grandson pulled out a gun. Lin Feng, you really married a good wife." Chapter 1139. Lin Feng's sweat dripped onto the ground along with old master Bai's words. Mrs. Lin still wanted to say something. Lin Feng didn't care about kneeling or not. He stood up and slapped her face. "Shut up." Mrs. Lin was stunned by this slap. She reached out to cover her face. Looking at her husband's furious expression, even her lips were trembling. Lin Feng pulled her over and knelt beside old master Bai. "Old chief, the entire courtyard knows that the reason why the Lin family is where it is today is all because of the old chief. The Bai family's great kindness to the Lin family. The Lin family will not dare to forget. Young master, you're right. No matter what our Lin family's identity is now, we're still part of the Bai family. My father is the adjutant of the old chief, and this will never change. This time, the Lin family has let the old chief down." Mrs. Lin was not stupid. After hearing Lin Feng's words, she instantly realized that she had reversed the situation. The Bai family had never taken advantage of the Lin family. On the contrary, without the Bai family, there would not be the Lin family today. Mrs. Lin panicked. Half of her face was swollen. She looked at old master Bai guiltily. The Bai family had always had a kind of upright and plain-spoken righteousness. Now this kind of righteousness was displayed even more vividly under his rage. Mrs. Lin was so scared that her face turned pale. She hurriedly explained, "Old chief, this is all a misunderstanding." You said that a Jew is a country bumpkin is also a misunderstanding?" Bai Juan's cold voice interrupted her. His hand was still holding little Baldy's head. "You overthrowing her soy milk is also a misunderstanding? Why are there so many misunderstandings in this world?" The more Lin Feng listened, the more miserable his expression became. Many times before, his father had told him to discipline his wife. However, he only felt that his wife usually treated people well. Although she liked to compare. Which family didn't like to compare nowadays? Wasn't this a small problem? But now, he realized that this wife of his not only liked to compare, but she also liked to insult people and trample on people. She didn't even let go of children. The key was that this child was brought back by the Bai family. Why didn't she use her brain to think about it carefully? What was the Bai family's status? Since they had already decided to bring the child back, and Bai Juan had personally agreed to it, then would the child not be protected by the Bai family? In order to let everyone in the courtyard know about little Aji's existence, Bai Juan brought her to meet all the old chiefs in the military compound on the first day. What was the purpose of this? Was it purely to greet the old senior officers with a smile? This was clearly telling the entire hospital that although little Aju was adopted, she was no different from a member of the Bai family. But his wife had actually made such a big mistake. Lin Feng really didn't know what to do. Mrs. Lin was still not convinced, because in her heart, the little Baldy was just a little bastard from the countryside, who didn't know who his parents were. However, she understood the current situation very well. If she did not admit her mistake, the old man would not let her go. Therefore, Mrs. Lin had been speaking anxiously. The content was probably to apologize to Bai Juan. Bai Juan glanced at her, his gaze indifferent. "You should say sorry to a Jew, not to me." Mrs. Lin gritted her teeth and looked at little Baldy. "A Jew, it's Auntie's fault this time. Look, if you had told Auntie earlier that your appetite was so big, there wouldn't be such a misunderstanding now. In fact, it's not a big deal for a child to eat a little more. Moreover, Auntie didn't have any ill intentions towards you at that time. It's just that Auntie's method was wrong, and her attitude was a little too much, which made you feel uncomfortable. Look at now, because of the two of us, the Bai family, and the Lin family have become estranged. This is not good. The old chief is old. Do you want Grandpa Bai to continue to be angry? Little Aju is so kind and a monk. She definitely doesn't want to make things difficult for the adults. She will definitely forgive Auntie, right? Little Baldy felt that this sentence sounded awkward no matter how she listened to it. She really didn't want the Bai family to have any bad effects because of her. Therefore, little Baldy said it straightforwardly. I won't make things difficult for Grandpa Bai. Buddha Wooly said that you should always be grateful to those who treat you well. Hearing the first half of this sentence, the corners of Mrs. Lin's mouth curled up. In the end, she was just a person who came down from the mountains. She just had a soft personality and didn't dare to cause any trouble. As long as she was criticized like this, she would definitely give in. However, the second half of little Baldy's sentence made Mrs. Lin's entire face turn green. She said, Kesu, I don't want to forgive you. You didn't even apologize to me. Buddha Wooly taught everyone that an apology has to be sincere. You're not sincere, but you're still in the Bai family now. It's not convenient for me to beat you up. When you leave the Bai family's courtyard, I'll make a move. Although my mother said that I have to be gentle with girls, after all, I'm going to be an abbot in the future, so I have to be gentlemanly. But I don't want to be gentle with you. I just want to beat you up. Little Baldy said it too straightforwardly. On the contrary, it made people feel that her entire little face was so cute that it could melt people's hearts. The main thing was that her actions were funny. If Baijuan didn't get up, she would kneel with Baijuan. How could Baijuan bear to let a child kneel? Helpless, the dignified young master Bai would never have thought that he, who was invincible in the military compound, would not be able to pull up a 4-year-old child. Little Aju's arm was held by Baijuan the entire time. The small claws of her other arm were pressed on the ground. She was kneeling on her 2 small knees with the kitten on her head. Her small body leaned forward as she spoke to Mrs. Lin in a serious manner. Every sentence made Madame Lin unable to use any of her tricks. Old Master Bai directly said, Lin Feng, you heard it too. What Aju said is what I want to say. The Bai family will not accept such an accusatory apology. You guys can go out. From today onwards, if anything happens to the Lin family in the future, don't come looking for me again. Go back and tell your father that I'm grateful to him for taking the bullet for me back then. But this doesn't mean that his daughter-in-law can bully the Bai family as she pleases. As soon as this sentence was said, Lin Feng felt that he had lost his composure. He knew that if he walked out of this door, the Lin family would be finished. It was not just wealth, but also the lifeline of the entire Lin family. Especially his father, who had been upright all his life, only had respect for the old chief. He still did not know about this matter when he was outside. Once he found out, the Lin family would be turned upside down. Even if the Bai family was put aside, the Lin family's ungrateful reputation in the military compound would spread. When that time came, what would the Lin family do? The more Lin Feng thought about it, the more anxious he became. However, Baijuan did not have the chance to explain to him. He directly asked Vice Commander Zhang to chase them out. Ever since Mrs. Lin married into the Lin family, she had never made such a fool of herself. Everyone in the compound was looking at her. Mrs. Lin was extremely angry. She said to Lin Feng, even if the Bai family is indebted to the Lin family, the current Lin family is not weak. Do they really think that they are the only one? Chapter 1140. What do you know? Lin Feng flung Mrs. Lin away. His anxious look was so obvious. It seemed that he had no choice but to inform the old man this time. Mrs. Lin really did not understand why her husband was so anxious. Even if they relied on the Bai family to start a family, there was no one left in the Bai family now. To put it bluntly, Baijuan did not even have a father. No matter how powerful old Master Bai was, how could he compare to them, who had descendants? Moreover, these sisters of hers in the courtyard were also madams of various families. Compared to the Bai family, the Lin family was very strong in other aspects. Mrs. Lin did not say it on the surface, but she had plenty of ideas in her heart. She planned to go back and use her madam's diplomatic policy. Mrs. Lin went to the Zhang family first. Before she could speak, The sister she married into the Zhang family started crying. She said that her husband had been called away by the higher-ups. She did not know why. Mrs. Lin smiled faintly. Look at you, why are you crying? Maybe there's a mission. You've just been here for a short time, and haven't experienced anything. Mrs. Zhang was coaxed by her and laughed. Seeing this, Mrs. Lin felt even more confident. These people were close to her to begin with. With these relationships, Old Master Bai had to weigh the pros and cons. In addition, Old Master Lin would definitely appear in this matter. What else did she have to worry about? She just had to wait for the news. She knew that no matter how protective the Bai family was, they would not really do anything to her for a country bumpkin from the mountains. The more Mrs. Lin thought about it, the more relieved she became. She even found a few sisters in the military courtyard to play cards with her, as if nothing had happened. After all, this was also a method of diplomacy. Come, let's play another round. Someone also advised her. This isn't very good. I heard that the Bai family is quite angry. No matter how angry they are, Old Master Bai has already scolded me. It's almost over. Do you think he will really fall out with the Lin family, for a little bastard child? That's not necessarily the case. So what's there to worry about? Come, cast the dice. Let's play cards first. When any of you are hungry, let Aunt Zhang make some soup for you. Before Mrs. Lin could finish the word round, there was a clang. The Lin family's door was pushed open by someone. The madams who were playing mahjong were startled by the noise. They all stood up and looked towards the outer hall. Madam Lin comforted her. It's fine. It must be that one of my family is back. She's still angry with me about the Bai family. Were you scolded by the old man? That's probably the case. One of my family members is very honest. The Bai family has scolded our Lin family so much, but he didn't say a single word. Madam Lin pressed her hand on the mahjong table and sighed. It's not good to be too sentimental. If you ask someone to help you once, you will have to be a servant for the rest of your life. Our Lin family is clearly not weak now, but we still have to be like a grandson and be scolded by Old Master Bai. This time, I think my old master will not let him off easily. Then you should go and take a look. As they spoke, they were about to leave. In the light, a motorcycle was parked right in front of the Lin family's gate. It was a limited edition BMW Tomahawk. The body was very large, beautiful, and stylish. The lines were so smooth that they were shining. The car was propped up by a figure using her long legs. Behind her sat a 9-year-old boy. The boy was wearing a well-ironed suit. He looked noble and handsome, but the way he looked at Mrs. Lin was a little heavy. At first, Madam Lin only saw such a motorcycle. She pulled the soldier beside her over and said, "What are you doing? Who can break in here just because they want to?" The soldier didn't say anything. His face was pale as he looked in that direction. Madam Lin followed his gaze and saw the 4 sports cars behind the motorcycle. Each of them had an aura that was difficult to ignore. The front lights were turned on, and they were all armed equipment. How did they break in here? Where were the guards? Where were the guards in the courtyard? Madam Lin was furious. Go and call them immediately. Tell them that someone has broken in. Tell them to send as many people as they can. Yes. The soldier received the order and was about to run out. However, before he could run 2 meters, he was stopped by a man who looked like a bear. That man was very tall, about 1.9 meters tall. He was bald and had long legs. His hands were very strong. With just a pull, he pressed him onto the hood of the car. Then, another handsome youth opened the car door beside him. Lin Feng was actually brought out by someone from inside. When Madam Lin saw her husband in the other party's hands, her eyes trembled. What was going on? What was going on? With a bang, the front of the tomahawk was turned. The figure on top of it took a step forward and slowly walked towards Madam Lin. The mottled light faded away, gradually revealing a clear face. Who else could it be but Hellion Vivian? Hellion Qingchen, who had already grown up, followed behind her, holding an assault rifle in his hand. If he didn't move, his entire body would be surrounded by an elegant aura. I heard that you dislike my sister very much? The boy spoke. There was an indescribable coldness in his voice. Madam Lin was sure that she had never seen this woman and boy before. So how could she dislike their sister? Did you recognize the wrong person? After all, Lin Feng was in the other party's hands, so Madame Lin's attitude was naturally very soft. Hellion Vivian looked at the flattery on her face and smiled. My mother's surname is Bailey, and her name is Gio. Oh, perhaps you still don't know enough. My mother grew up in the mountains, and is a monk. She's a little bald. She's very strong and eats a lot. Her Buddhist name is Xianaju. There was a loud boom. Madame Lin felt all the blood in her body rush to the top of her head. A monk, a little bald head, very strong, eats a lot. There was no need to confirm. It was indeed that little country bumpkin. How could this be? How could she? Before Madame Lin could figure it out, Hellion Vivian was about to speak. This time, she didn't smile, and her eyes emitted a coldness that was difficult to ignore. Since you think that my Aju is a bastard child without parents, then I'll let you see how I will deal with the person who bullies my daughter Qingchen. Madame Lin accepted a bribe of 10,000 yuan. The money is a little. After all, she's just a military family member, and doesn't have a clear military rank. Hellion Qingchen held the notebook in her hand. However, it doesn't matter. Our family has a professional team of lawyers. We will work hard to drag the entire Lin family down. Who asked my Aju to be a bastard child? When Madame Lin heard this last sentence, she couldn't hold on any longer. Her vision darkened, and she almost fainted. The only thought in her mind was, this time, she was really done for. Chapter 1141. 10,000 yuan was simply a drop in the bucket for the Lin family. But now that Lin Feng was being transferred, if such a thing was exposed, it was very likely that he would be punished. If that was the case, she would not have a good ending. But then again, the matter of 10,000 yuan could be considered a big deal. But it could also be considered a small matter. The Lin family had a foundation for so many years, and people from various departments knew each other. Those people would always give face to the old man. Even if they did not give face to the old man, they still had to be wary of the Tang family. Old Chief Bai said that he was going to fall out with them, but at most, it would only be directed at her personally, and would not involve the Lin family. Because something happened to the Lin family, the Bai family would definitely not feel good. The Bai family and the Tang family were cousins. With such a close relationship, the other party could not do anything to her. The more Mrs. Lin thought about it, the calmer she became. She raised her eyes to look at Hellion Vivian. I don't know what you're talking about. I only know one thing. This is the military compound. If you barge in without any procedures, you will have to bear legal responsibility. Who said I didn't have any procedures? Hellion Weiwei chuckled as she tilted her head and fiddled with the gun in her hand. Then, she lifted her chin and pointed at Lin Feng. Tell this madam of yours, who tramples on the weak, whether it is legal for me to enter the military compound. Yes. Lin Feng's forehead was covered in sweat, and his tone was not as imposing as before. From the moment he saw the medal on Hellion Vivian's shoulder, he knew that they had kicked an iron plate this time. The Tang sect's 18 shadows. Each of them had made military contributions. While they protected the country, they also had many privileges. One of them included that as long as they showed the medal, they could enter and leave the compound. Moreover, the other party's identity was not that simple. Other than the Tang sect's shadow, she was also the internationally renowned arms queen, Hellion Vivian. Even if these were not mentioned, the power of the financial group behind her was not to be underestimated. The Juwei group was a company that even they did not want to provoke. This person was actually Aji's mother. Why had he never heard Chief Bai mention it before? It seemed that even Bai Xuan did not know about this matter. Lin Feng's entire being was in chaos. He was really scared. How could he marry such a reckless woman? When Mrs. Lin saw that Lin Feng's situation was different, she couldn't help but lose some of her arrogance. However, she wouldn't change her attitude. Even if it's legal, I can still sue you for breaking into my Lin family's house with a bicycle. Sue me? Hellion Vivian laughed. He turned around with a bang. The black muzzle was aimed at Mrs. Lin. Before Mrs. Lin could react, there was a loud bang. The bullet pierced through her forearm. Blood gushed out in an instant. Ah! A few madams around them screamed out loud. The other 4 adjutants wanted to come forward, but they were all pushed back by young Elle's arm. Madame Lin was in so much pain that she immediately collapsed to the ground. Cold sweat and tears poured out together. Hellion Vivian walked towards her. "If you want to sue me, you have to have a reason. It's just that trespassing into the Lin family is too small a matter. I'll give you this reason now. Let's see if your Lin family will sue me." Bai Zhuan didn't shoot because he left a way out for the Lin family and the Bai family in his heart. With me, the Lin family has no way out. Old Master Lin's lifelong loyalty has been ruined by a gold digger like you. It's really unpleasant to see. Adjutant Lin, it's time for you to change your taste in women. You. Mrs. Lin was angry and in pain. She wanted nothing more than to pounce on Hellion Vivian and bite her to death, but she was afraid of the gun in her hand. This matter will definitely not end just like that. I will sue you. I will definitely sue you. Hellion Vivian looked at her with a smile. She squatted down and gently patted her face with the handle of the gun. I fired this shot on behalf of my daughter. You are welcome to sue me at any time. As she spoke, Hellion Weiwei stood up with her long and slender legs and set her gaze on Lin Feng again. I'll get someone to keep an eye on the Lin family. If this woman is still around after 3 days, I won't care about the old master's face anymore. You know very well what the consequences will be. Lin Feng lowered his head. Yes. All right, we still need Adjutant Lin to send us out. As she spoke, Hellion Vivian turned around and looked at Mrs. Lin, who was in so much pain. After all, the courtyard is not a place where commoners like us can casually barge into. Mrs. Lin screamed desperately as she was carried onto the bed. She just couldn't swallow this anger. The entire Lin family was emitting an unsettling smell of blood. The few ladies who were playing cards were also frightened by this matter. Lin Feng didn't have the time to care about the things behind him. He followed beside Hellion Vivian. Hellion Qingchen, who was already 9 years old, didn't want to leave at all. Like a little prince, he stood at a place not far from the Bai family. He stopped in his tracks, his jet black eyes only looking in one direction. Hellion Vivian knew what her son was thinking. She also wanted to see her daughter. However, now is not the right time. Don't tell the Bai family about our identities for the time being. And don't tell anyone. Hellion Vivian said to Lin Feng in a low voice. I won't make things difficult for the Lin family. However, Adjutant Lin, you know better than anyone how many people's futures are ruined by women. It's up to you whether you still want this daughter-in-law or not. But there is one thing I want to tell you. This time, my little Aju didn't lose anything. If there is a next time, don't blame me for not remembering our old relationship. There won't be a next time. Lin Feng stood up straight. He finally understood what his father meant when he told him back then. To marry a wife, one had to be virtuous. This sentence was not without its original meaning. This wife of his really didn't know where she was wrong at all. After Hellion Vivian got the answer she wanted, she turned to look at the little prince behind her. Qingchen has left. They are still waiting. I promised my brother that I would take a photo of little Aju for him to see. Hellion Qingchen just stood there. Her pretty little face was really very handsome, but the corners of her eyes were a little lonely. He had even prepared a big bag of cash for his sister. He was going to give it to her. Could it be that she was really going to leave without even seeing him? Faintly, a layer of spiritual energy lingered around Hellion Qingchen's body. Usually at this time, little Baldy would sit on the big bed in Bai Zhuan's room and roll around, chanting Buddhist scriptures and meditating. But today, she seemed to have sensed something. She suddenly sat up straight and did not greet Bai Zhuan. She just ran out with her little turtle claws wrapped in a white cloth. Bai Zhuan was still washing the child's kasaya, so he did not react so quickly. Everyone knew that when little Baldy ran, she was no different from a flaming wheel. In the blink of an eye, she was gone. However, after running out, she did not know where to turn. The white cat on top of her head seemed to know what her little master was thinking and meowed towards the east. Chapter 1142. Hearing this, little Baldy paused and immediately turned around. Like a flaming wheel, he ran towards the direction of the gate at full speed. This time, little Baldy's running was different from usual. She was afraid that she would miss something. Her pink little face was covered in a thin layer of sweat, but she still did not give up. While panting, she saw the noble-looking young man under the tree from afar. The young man was wearing a decent suit with a white rose on the pocket of his suit. He seemed to be preparing to leave. Who else could it be but Hellion Qingchen? In the entire family, only Qingchen could get close to little Baldy. Baligaju and Bailey Shangxia had to stay 100 meters away from her. The demonic nature was too strong and would disturb little Aju. They knew this better than anyone else. Therefore, Bailey Shangxia was now sitting in the sports car outside the courtyard with a cold smile. He had thought of many ways to kill the Lin family. Little Baldy had seen her second brother before, but that was only a photo. Now she saw Hellion Qingchen in person. Little Baldy immediately pounced on her second brother. To be honest, if it were anyone else, they would definitely be pounced on by little Baldy like this. After all, her strength was obvious. Only Hellion Qingchen curled his lips and hugged his younger sister in his arms. Second brother? Is it second brother? Is it a living second brother? It's not the second brother in the photo. When little Baldy was excited, she completely showed her true colors when she was a monk on the mountain. Second brother, why are you here? Didn't you say that you can't see me? Why is second brother so tall? Why am I so small? Hellion Qingchen listened to the little girl's words with a doting expression on his face. Aju, eat more. You will grow taller in the future. But I can already eat enough, and I'm still so small. When it came to height, little Baldy was distressed. Hellion Qingchen patted his little sister's head. His eyes fell on the little girl's hand, and his gaze turned cold. Does it still hurt? It doesn't hurt. Little Baldy raised her little hand. Second brother, don't worry. When I recover, I will go and catch that person and beat him up. Hellion Qingchen agreed with her sister on this point. If you want to beat him up, just do it. Don't hold it in. Yes. Second brother, a living second brother. Little Baldy was so happy that he kept repeating the same sentence. Hellion Qingchen also missed her little sister. She kissed her little forehead and said, "When you grow up, my brother and I will come to pick you up. Mom and Dad are waiting outside. I can only stay for a while. My brother asked me to take a picture of you and show it to him. I saw Big Brother." Speaking of Bailey Shangxia, little Baldy was even more eager to express his feelings. His little paws hugged Hellion Qingchen's waist as he raised his little face and said seriously, "That day when I was shopping, I saw the commercial that Big Brother acted in. After that, I stood there and watched for a very long time." Hellion Qingchen was still smiling. Suddenly, he realized that someone was approaching. He let go of little Baldy in his arms, and then put the package in his hand in his sister's hand. "You don't know how to use a bank card. These are all given to you by your brothers. If you don't have money, write letters to your brothers. I brought a lot of money down the mountain this time, but I can't spend it." Little Bald Head puffed up her cheeks and finished speaking. She still took the package. She and her brothers had never been courteous, but she was reluctant to let Qingchen go. Her little hand kept tugging on Hellion Qingchen's suit. Hellion Qingchen looked at his sister in front of him, then squatted down and kissed her face again. Like a little adult, he instructed little Baldy, "Aju, we will come to pick you up soon. Second brother has to leave. Coming to see you this time is already a violation of the precepts. It is not good for your cultivation. Mom said that you are in the Bai family and have Bai Zhuan's protection. We can rest assured, even if Mom, Dad, and brothers are not by your side, as long as you have something, we will appear." Okay. Little Baldy never cried, but when he heard that his second brother was leaving, the little guy's eyes were a little red. No matter how reluctant he was, his little hand also let go of the cloth he was holding. Hellion Qingchen glanced behind him. Then he walked out of the courtyard. Separated by the iron gate of the courtyard, little Baldy was lying there. His little hands were grabbing, and his big round eyes were unwilling to look away. He kept looking until Hellion Qingchen's figure disappeared. When Bai Zhuan arrived, he saw such a scene. He did not know who little Aju was looking at. He frowned and looked outside, but he did not see anything. Bai Zhuan had always been smart. His first reaction was to check the surveillance cameras in the courtyard. But the strange thing was that there were flowers everywhere in the video. However, According to the guard on duty, little Aju had indeed seen a person. That person was a boy about the same age as her. A boy. When Bai Juan heard this news, his brows furrowed even tighter. Just as he was still thinking about the relationship between that boy and little Aju, outside the military compound, a pure black extended Rolls-Royce with an aura that was difficult to ignore drove into the traffic. Bailey Shangxia sat in the car. His handsome face had already grown into a little Prince Charming that could make little girls blush. The corners of his mouth curled up, and cold white teeth popped out between his thin lips. He snorted coldly and said, "It seems that this Bai Juan treats his sister quite well. The Bai family is quite reliable." Helian Qingchen pulled up the photo from her phone and showed it to Bailey Shangxia. Little Aju has grown a little taller now. Bailey Shangxia had always been a brother lover. First, he wiped the corner of his brother's mouth. Then, the two youths leaned their heads together and looked at their sister's photo. In front of them, a man as elegant as a demon reached out and pulled Helian Weiwei into his arms, whispering something into her ear. That perfect side profile was reflected on the glass window, making people unable to shift their gaze away from it. It was as if no matter how many years had passed, as long as Helian Vivian was around, his eyes would always be filled with gentleness. Of course, after leaving Helian Vivian, the aura on the man's body changed. It was completely cold, causing the clouds to change and the wind to surge. "Where is he?" "Your Highness, in the side hall." "You can let him go back now. We have to let old Master Lin tell his daughter-in-law what kind of person she has provoked." "Yes, Your Highness." Old Master Lin had been in the military all his life. When he came out of the villa, he could not help but feel a lingering fear. However, compared to the lingering fear, he simply wished that he could immediately chase Mrs. Lin out of the Lin family. Mrs. Lin was still lying on the bed and making a fuss. When she saw that old Master Lin had returned, the fuss became even more intense. She shouted that she must find the person who fired the gun and let the other party be sued. Old Master Lin was so angry that he laughed. His face was gloomy. "Do you know who the other party is? You want the other party to be sued." Chapter 1143. I don't care who the other party is. I just can't take this lying down. Mrs. Lin dragged her right hand that was wrapped in a bandage. Her eyes were blurred with tears, but her arrogance did not diminish at all. "She came to our Lin family to shoot people. I must make her regret bullying people like this." Old Master Lin was so infuriated by his daughter-in-law's ignorance that he only wanted to sneer. "Then go ahead and sue her. Lin Feng, divorce this woman right now. If you don't even think about staying in the Lin family anymore." Mrs. Lin did not expect to end up like this. How could old Master Lin let Lin Feng divorce her? It was such a small matter. Moreover, she was the one who was injured. Shouldn't he help her? Mrs. Lin was not convinced. She turned to look at Lin Feng. "You won't divorce me, right? Fengzi, we have been husband and wife for so many years. Now that I am the one who is being shot, can't I vent my anger?" "Vent your anger?" Lin Feng threw the hat in his hand. "How else do you want to vent your anger? It's fine if you usually step on the low and bully the high in the courtyard. But why do you even bully a child? Now, you have provoked someone you shouldn't have provoked. You even said that no matter who the other party is, you can't take this lying down. How can you be so capable? Are you really not afraid of anything? Then let me tell you. Who is the one who came looking for the Lin family today? It's Helian Weiwei, who you're bent on making connections with." After hearing the words Helian Vivian, Mrs. Lin, who had been noisy just now, was completely dumbfounded. She froze on the spot in a daze. She could not believe what she had heard. The little country bumpkin's mother was Helian Vivian. How was that possible? How was that possible? Mrs. Lin was no stranger to the name Helian Vivian. The madam of the Ju Wei group, the legendary woman she had always wanted to know. However, the mistake was that she had never seen her before. She did not know that Helian Vivian actually had a daughter. Mrs. Lin reached out and grabbed Lin Feng's sleeve. Unfortunately, Lin Feng did not want to hear what she was saying. In fact, even if Helian Vivian hadn't come, old Master Lin wouldn't have let Madame Lin off so easily, just because she dared to go to the Bai family like that. It was only a matter of time before old Master Lin stopped wanting such a daughter-in-law. That night, old Master Lin personally went to the Bai family. As usual, he lowered himself even more. Others might not understand, but only he knew that without the old chief's support, he could only go back to his hometown and feed the pigs. The Lin family was in a good position now, but they couldn't forget what they had done for them, just because they were in a good position. This was the foundation of being a person. The two people who had opinions about the Bai family also had their own ways of dealing with them. They had not been in the military compound for long. Only then did they know that the Bai, Shao, and Li families had joined forces. This time, I've brought down all the people who could be brought down. That vicious woman from the Lin family won't be back for a while. Even Uncle Lin has been sent to the provincial city to reflect on himself. This is good for the Lin family. It also saves that woman from causing any more trouble. Now our courtyard belle is crying and asking for her mother. Bai Juan, tell me, how are you going to thank me? I'll let you copy my English homework, but there's one thing. You have to learn your spoken language yourself. Bai Juan said as he picked up little Baldy who had washed her face, and put her back on the sofa. When Li Hailu saw little Aju, he wanted to tease her, but it was obvious that little Aju was not the same as before. What's wrong with the child? Why don't you eat? Bai Juan's hand also paused. He saw little Baldy leaning against the window and looking outside again. He did not know what the child was looking at, but he always had an illusion in his heart that little Aju's strange behavior was related to the little boy he had seen before. However, after investigating for a long time, he could not find any clues. This made Bai Juan very concerned. This concern did not subside even after the summer vacation had passed, and he started school. Master Bai usually did not do things out of line. Bringing the child to school was probably the most rebellious thing he had ever done. However, he was really worried about leaving little Aju in the courtyard, so he could only bring her with him. Fortunately, the school had also informed him. Mother Xiao was also the principal. In addition, Bai Juan had always been a good student. He had basically learned all the elementary school knowledge. The books he was reading now were not even understood by some junior high school students. Therefore, little Aju following Bai Juan to school would not affect Bai Juan's studies. However, arranging for a child to enter the classroom like this would attract the attention of others. Little Baldy was afraid that Bai Juan would be in a difficult position, so she immediately said that she could wait for her little brother outside. Bai Juan did not agree at first, but he could not bear the child's insistence. Outside the classroom was a corridor. It was clean and beautiful. When Bai Juan was in class, little Baldy sat by Bai Juan's window and preached to the little ants that came and went. Occasionally she would recite scriptures. Little Baldy always remembered that she was going to be the abbot in the future, so she could not betray her Buddha. On the other hand, the teachers who came to class had never seen such an obedient child. They could not help but look in little Baldy's direction. When it was time for class, Bai Juan would carry little Aju into the classroom and put her in his seat. Coincidentally, little Gangster Li was sitting at the same table as him. Little Gangster Li finally understood what it was like to not want a brother when you have a sister. Ever since little Aju came, he could not sleep in class or after class. Bai Juan, who was obsessed with his sister, would kick him when he did not see little Aju for a while. Now his grades had increased, and he was even called to the office by the teacher for questioning, asking if he had copied during the exam. Seriously, he also had times when he wrote his own questions. Was it good? Little Gangster Li stuffed a mouthful of sandwich into his mouth gloomily. When he turned around, Bai Juan was feeding little Aju yogurt with a small spoon. That gentle look made all the girls in the class want to scream. Anyway, Bai Juan had been receiving more and more love letters recently. Little Gangster Li looked at him with resentment. Why didn't any girl realize how good he was? Little Aju ate very happily. She ate one mouthful after another, while playing with the little Rubik's Cube that Bai Juan had handed to her. Bai Juan smiled and wiped the child's mouth. Wait for another class. We'll be home soon. Little brother, don't worry about me. I'll be obedient. Little Baldy said seriously, but her big head was a little itchy. She stretched out her little claws and scratched again and again. Chapter 1144. What's wrong? Baijuan watched from the side, but the child had heat rash because it was too hot outside. Without thinking, little Baldy lowered his head and showed him. My hair has grown out. I need to use a hairbrush. Baijuan was stunned. It was not that there was only a layer of fur on that little bald head. Keep it first. I'll cut it for you in the future. Although he said that, Baijuan had long known that little Baldy was a girl. How could he really raise the child to be a manly girl? Although little Baldy always subconsciously grew in that direction, young Master Bai still had a plan to raise the child. His heart was clear. Little Baldy also gradually realized that he was not the same as other little boys. He was similar to those fragrant girls. Everyone in the class liked little Aju very much, especially the English teacher, who taught Baijuan. In the past, Baijuan had even said that this English teacher had grammatical mistakes. One had to know how embarrassing this was. She felt that she was not facing a primary school student at all, but a university professor. Ever since little Aju came, there was one time when Baijuan was so happy to see his sister that he did not even care about her. Moreover, little Baldy was indeed obedient. He was only 4 years old, but he never made a fuss. There was always a little white cat lying on top of his head. Usually, when he sat outside the classroom, he did not forget to help the cleaning auntie pick up the plastic water bottles on the ground. He was very familiar with the school's employees. However, there was one thing. No matter where little Baldy was, with a word from Baijuan, he would run back. Ever since he brought little Aju along, Baijuan, who had never eaten snacks, would always stuff a lot of things in his pocket to prevent little Baldy from getting hungry. Little Aju could eat, and this had not changed until now. Her pink and tender cheeks were pouted like a little squirrel. It was almost winter. Little Aju was a little taller, but it was only a little taller. It was basically negligible. Compared to Baijuan, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. For the entire December, Lord Bai had been thinking about what clothes to buy for the child. In the end, he still bought her a red panda down jacket. It did not have a tail or ears, but little Aju was too cute. Even without these things, she could still sway around and give people the feeling of a beautiful little raccoon. Just like that, she was held by Baijuan's hand. The rate of people turning their heads was always exceptionally high. Everyone in the school wanted to talk to Baijuan, especially those girls. In the past, with Class Beauty Lin around, it was not easy for them to make a move. Now that they heard that Class Beauty Lin and Baijuan had a grudge, they all felt a little moved. Don't underestimate a primary school student's first awakening of love. A 5th grader already knows what a love letter is. She also knew that it would be more effective to make a move on Aju, so she came to her shyly. What kind of girls do you like? Little Baldy frowned. He didn't know what kind of girl little brother liked, but little brother had said that bad food was a blessing. Thus little Baldy answered seriously, "Yes, I can." The girls were speechless. Master Bai's aesthetic sense was really strange. However, it had to be said that after little Baldy's answer, many male students realized that their desk mates no longer complained about losing weight. They ate what they wanted and grew taller. As the campus belle, Yuan Ting Ting was the last one to look for little Baldy. Behind her were a few girls who were dressed in a Western style. They were commonly known as followers. "You're Baijuan's sister? Then give this letter to him, and tell him that I'm waiting for him in the school's boulevard." Yuan Ting Ting didn't know where she learned this from. Probably because she watched too many idol dramas. She felt that the more individualistic a girl was, the more attention she would attract boys with high standards. Therefore, she didn't even care about her manners. She stuffed a letter to little Baldy and left with her followers. Only a confident and generous girl like her could make Baijuan look at her differently. In fact, when little Baldy was waiting for Baijuan with a lot of food, Baijuan didn't even look at the letter. He directly tore the letter into pieces and threw it all into the trash can. Little Baldy brought the message to him. Master Li exclaimed from the side, "Not bad, Master Bai. Even the thorniest rose beauty in our school has taken a fancy to you. Go away. Don't say such things in front of a Jew in the future." Baijuan bent down and picked little Baldy up. His slender fingertips wiped her lips. "It's too cold outside now. Do you want to sit in the classroom with me? Little Baldy's cheeks were still puffed up. She chewed the biscuit that Bai Juan fed her and shook her head. I'll disturb others if I go in. It's not cold outside. When I was in the temple, I often ran around in a pair of pants. I've never caught a cold. That's right. Little Aju is like a little King Kong. What are you worried about? Master Li threw his school bag and carried it on his shoulder. Brother, are you really not going to meet her? Bai Juan's cold eyes swept over him. Who said I was going to take Aju to buy clothes today? Okay. Little Aju is the boss. I'll call Shaolin now. Tell him why he insists on not being in the same class as me. Why is that? Li Hailu spoke with a Beijing accent. As he nagged, he was full of puzzlement. Little Baldy looked at him seriously and said, Brother Shaolin is afraid that you will lower his average IQ. Master Li was speechless. Could they still have a good chat? For big boys, carrying a little girl on the street would definitely attract attention. In fact, Little Baldy did not accept the fact that she was a girl. She felt that the little brother and the others must have made a mistake. However, her Buddha had said that she must allow other people's values to exist. Since the little brother liked her so much, then it was good that she was a girl. This did not affect her determination to be the abbot of the temple in the future at all. Although there had been girls looking for her in school recently, she had never had any thoughts about it. She was still very loyal to Buddha Wooly. While shopping, Little Baldy saw the advertisement on the screen again. This time, Bai Juan clearly sensed that her obsession with Bailey Shangxia was very unusual. Under any circumstances, Aju had never let go of his hand. Except when she saw the person on the screen. That kind of feeling was not very good. After all, she was a child he raised. Why did she spend more time looking at others than looking at him? This kind of thing had never happened before. Bai Juan's eyes darkened, but he did not say anything. He held Little Baldy's hand and entered the mall. Every time they went out, they would go shopping. Bags of all sizes were basically filled with Little Aju's clothes. Little Aju changed into new pajamas that day. After taking a shower, she handed a big hairbrush to Bai Juan. Then, she pouted her little body and revealed her head. Little brother, I've been waiting for many days, but you haven't shaved my head. I've observed it. You must have forgotten. Chapter 1145. For the first time, Master Bai, who was awe-inspiring in the courtyard, felt a little speechless. After all, he had dragged it on for so long. He always thought that the child had long forgotten about shaving her head. Why was little Aju still thinking about it? Of course, Bai Juan did not want the child to become a little monk again. It was not easy for him to grow a little furry hair. So how could he cut it for her again? One had to know that he had spent a lot of effort to make her stop insisting that she was a boy. Now if he shaved her head again, the child would become a complete tomboy. Although little Aju's boyfriend power was often off the charts, Master Bai still did not want the child to be in any danger. Of course, his child had to be cherished in the palm of his hand. Master Bai's 3 views probably did not matter. Just this kind of stubbornness in her youth. Bai Juan would not allow little Aju to shave her head bald again. But who was Master Bai? He was first-rate at coaxing children. He would definitely not say it directly. Therefore, Bai Juan looked at the extremely cute little panda in front of him. He reached out and hugged the little girl in his arms. He gently patted little Aju's back. Aju, do you know why you always grow so slowly? Everyone knows that height is little Aju's most fatal weakness. The little girl immediately shook her head and said very seriously, I don't know. Because you always don't grow your own hair. Master Bai had always been good at studying. At such a young age, he gave people the feeling that he was a student of Tsinghua University. Think about it carefully. Those martial nephews you saw in the temple, did they all have hair in the beginning? Little Aju thought for a moment and nodded her head. Master Bai continued to fool her. Are they very tall? Little Aju nodded again. There was a martial nephew who looked like a big bear. That's because he grew his hair. Bai Juan lied without blinking. In fact, Master Bai knew better than anyone else that those people in the temple had all committed crimes. Moreover, they had committed major crimes. Other than some people who were committed by high IQs, they were basically all burly men, so their height was definitely not low. Little Aju tilted her head in confusion. Grew his hair? You're right. Baizhuan had also read the Buddhist scriptures, so he understood the child's thinking very well. He reached out and pulled the small strap on the little panda in his arms. Isn't there a sentence in our Buddhist scriptures? The sea of bitterness is boundless, repent and be saved? You've been bald since you were young, so how can you express your respect for Buddha? Moreover, all of us keep our hair, but you don't. Being bald in the temple is a sign of respect to the Buddha. Being bald outside the temple will only affect your growth. Little Aju's face was solemn as she listened very carefully. She really had not considered this before. Come to think of it, not to mention his martial nephews, even his senior martial brothers used to have hair. It seemed that she had to grow her hair out first. I will never shave my head again. After the little person finished speaking seriously, she lay on Baizhuan's body. She was so soft that she really looked like a little panda. Baizhuan had always been good to her. Ever since the two of them separated last time, they had never had any conflicts, and had always slept together. At 8:30 p.m., it was probably time for Baizhuan to tell little Aju a bedtime story. The little person's favorite action was to use one of her little claws to grab one of her calves. The other calf had to be placed on Baizhuan's body. It always looked a little clingy. Baizhuan never despised the child for sticking to him. On the contrary, the more it was like this, the better his mood was. Even Master Li knew that if he wanted to ask Baizhuan to do something, little Aju had to be present. In this way, the chances of success were as high as 90%. Of course, ever since little Aju came to the Bai family, there was an unwritten rule between the little friends. That was, they were not allowed to call Baizhuan between 8:30 p.m. and 9 p.m. Whoever called would have to wait for Baizhuan to give them a cold shoulder the next day. This was the time for little Aju to sleep. Baizhuan had to coax the child. It was the same today, but the only difference was that after little Aju finished listening to the story, she did not go to sleep immediately. Instead, she arched her small body and lay in Baizhuan's arms. She played with the small quilt and asked in a childish voice, "Little brother, what kind of girl do you like?" Baizhuan, who was still thinking about covering the little girl with the quilt, suddenly paused. For the second time in his life, he felt choked by someone. Helpless, little Aju seemed to be very curious about this matter. Her big bright eyes looked at him, as if she would not sleep today, if he did not tell her. Baizhuan had no choice but to smile and say, "Why did you ask all of a sudden?" Some of the older sisters asked me, "Other than knowing that you like girls who can eat a lot, I don't know anything else." As little Aju said this, she somersaulted. So I told them this. Baizhuan looked at her silly and cute appearance and wanted to laugh, but in the future, when they ask you questions, just say that you don't know either. Little brother is not happy that others ask you that. Troublesome. Oh, little Aju seemed to understand. Then I won't ask anymore. Baizhuan carried the child over and hugged her in his arms. Of course it's fine for Aju to ask, but this is a secret between you and me. You can't tell others. Not even Li Hailu. I can't even tell him. When the little girl heard that she could not even tell her best friend, her expression immediately became serious. Little brother, don't worry. I swear on my name as the future temple host that I will never tell anyone the secret between you and me. Baizhuan's eyes were filled with a smile. I like furry girls who roll around on the bed. I eat a lot and have great strength. I want to be a temple host. Little Aju paused and her eyes lit up. Isn't that me? It's you. Baizhuan really had unprecedented patience for Aju. Can you sleep now? The little girl nodded heavily. She put down the small quilt that she was playing with and covered the two of them. She was very manly. Sleep. Baizhuan coaxed her before quietly standing up. Then, he pushed open the door and walked downstairs. The first thing he did was to call Li Hailu back. What did you just send? Didn't we agree to play games together today? The few of us are waiting. Is little Aju asleep? I'll go online now. I can't play too late. I still have math class tomorrow. I know. Master, go online quickly. We've been waiting for you for a long time. One more thing. Baizhuan paused for a moment. Li Hailu immediately realized that it was an important matter. What? Don't always let those girls send love letters to Aju. She's still young. Chapter 1146. By now, everyone knew that the child that the Bai family brought back was Master Bai's life. Master Li immediately nodded. No problem. But Master Bai, I have to give you a piece of advice. This is all your fault for being too handsome and too attractive. Keep a low profile in the future, understand? Get lost. Turn on the computer and connect. Bai Juan laughed softly. Master Li was very excited. To be honest, leave a way out for us brothers. Do you know what it means to be single? Look, we're almost in the 6th grade now, right? When we're in the 6th grade, you can still live peacefully for a year. When we're in the middle school, there will be other students. At that time, there will definitely be many female students who will send you love letters. You should consider our feelings. No, that's not right. It's not us, it's me. Shaolin, that boring man, actually has girls who like him. I don't understand. I'm so handsome. Why doesn't anyone send me love letters? To think that I secretly spray my mother's perfume before going to school every day. Don't these girls smell it? Bai Juan slowly turned on the computer. No girl likes a girl who sprays enough female perfume. No wonder you received a boy's confession. Shut up. Master Li was scared. Don't talk about that idiot. One day, I will kill him. Bai Juan chuckled. I think he treats you well, and is very sincere in marrying you home. Anyway, you two have been engaged when you were a child. At that time, didn't you always look forward to going to junior high and seeing the Princess Gu in your heart? Why didn't you look forward to it after meeting him in advance? That's because I always thought that he was a girl. Tell me, why is a boy called Gu Rao? Isn't this deliberately making people misunderstand? Master Li let out a long sigh. To think that I, Master Li, have kept my chastity for him for more than 10 years. It's all a trick. Bai Juan reminded him. You're just 10 years old this year. I've kept my chastity for my Princess Gu since I was in my mother's womb. Little Gangster Li gritted his teeth and said, who would have thought that he was a man? Forget it. Let's not talk about him anymore. Let's focus on you. If you continue to be a public nuisance to our boys, when you enter junior high, you will receive even more love letters. Those girls are not stupid. When they see that I can't deliver a love letter, they will definitely make a move on little Aju. If you don't want her to have any more trouble, you should find a girl as soon as possible. My old man said that actually, getting a wife is just like that. It is quite boring. When Little Gangster Li said this, Little Gangster Li's mother had just returned. At that time, his father was also beside his mother. He looked at his wife very loyally, and didn't care about what Li Hailu was saying at all. By the time he reacted, his wife had already stopped him from entering the house. She even asked him to reflect on why he felt that marriage was boring. Therefore that night, Li Hailu was beaten up by his father again. However, after hearing what he said, Lord Bai did have some concerns. After turning off the computer, Bai Juan returned to his room. Looking at the little girl who was sleeping soundly with her little belly exposed, his eyes darkened. Little Aju came down from the mountain. There were some things that he did not want the child to worry about, especially these unimportant things. Moreover, the child was still so young. It was not very good to be exposed to things like or dislike so early. It was fine to say that he was selfish, or that he did not know how to teach children. He did not want Aju to understand what it meant to like so early, because it was very likely that once she knew what that kind of feeling was, she would leave him. The current Bai Juan could no longer believe what would happen to him if the little girl in front of him was no longer around. If the other party had never appeared, he could eat alone, shower alone and sleep alone. But she just had to appear. She was so soft and small. But when something happened, her first reaction was to protect him. She even said that she had promised her grandfather that she would take good care of him. And because of the matter of being called a country bumpkin not long ago, she gave him a lot of money and said that she would support him in the future. He did not want anyone to know how cute his little Aju was at all. He clearly knew that this was not right. But at this moment, Bai Juan let himself go. He did not want little Aju to leave him. He never wanted to. Bai Juan reached out and hugged the child in his arms. It was as if this was the only way to calm the uneasiness in his heart. In fact, this matter was easy to solve, as long as he did not let a Jew come into contact with those so-called love letters again. Just like that, day after day passed. It was another romantic end of summer. This summer vacation should be the happiest summer vacation Li Hailu had ever had. Because he had entered junior high school, there was no homework to do. The few people in the courtyard were playing unbridled. Of course, even if there were no rules, they still had to go home at 7 o'clock. Because little Aju was around, they could not be too unruly. Otherwise, when the time came, the child would definitely chant scriptures to them. They could endure it, but they could not endure Master by doting on the child. It was true that little Aju did whatever she said. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that little Aju was very important to Master Bai. Those who wanted the Bai family to do something had long thought about this matter. Otherwise, there would be rumors outside that if they wanted to make the eldest young master of the Bai family happy, as long as they praised little Aju a few times, the matter would be considered settled. Little Aju was obedient, but her strength was so great that it hurt the self-esteem of these youths. Sometimes, Bai Juan liked to read in the courtyard. He asked Andy Wang to cut a few pieces of frozen watermelon, and sat on a chair made of reeds. He lowered his eyes and studied the third-grade questions in his hand. Bai Juan had always been like this. Before he entered the first grade, he had already learned the knowledge of the third grade. This was Master Bai's nature. Little Aju sat beside him, holding a large cattail leaf fan in her hand. She fanned herself again and again, not tired at all. She was even humming Buddhist songs. Bai Juan knew how to teach children. He changed the Buddhist songs into an English version and gave it to little Aju. Sometimes, he would hold the little girl and teach her a few Chinese questions. Little Aju was very serious when she studied. She just liked to scratch her big head. She was about to turn 5 years old. She had already become a little girl with a doll's head. Her hair was neither long nor short, just enough to cover her small pointed chin, making the child's eyes bigger and more beautiful. All of this seemed to have become the most beautiful scenery in the courtyard. Everyone who passed by the Bai family could see the young master of the Bai family holding a cute little panda in his arms, seriously learning English, mathematics, and Chinese. Every time Li Bawang's father saw this scene, he would drag Li Bawang out and beat him up. A 10-year-old young man was not as obedient as a 5-year-old child. Beat him up. Chapter 1147. After the summer vacation, the children in the courtyard became real junior high school students. Although the 6th grade was only 1 year away from junior high school. However, for children of that age, this was a qualitative leap. Other than the desire to become beautiful like when they were young, most of the girls really felt touched. This year, little Aju successfully entered the primary school of number 1 high school. She was in the same school as Bai Juan, but one was in the east and the other was in the west. At first, the teacher thought that little Aju was too small, and thought that she was not old enough. Who would have thought that little Aju would do the test, and even know the questions of the 3rd and 4th grades? Little Aju did not want to be in the 1st grade either. It was not because of anything else, but because she was afraid that she would not be able to control herself and beat up the children in the class. After all, they were so young. What if she broke them with one punch? Thinking of these things, little Aju was a little conflicted. Later, after learning from Master Li that her little brother had skipped a grade, she began to strongly request to go directly to the 3rd grade. Even if Xiao Lin's mother was the principal, she could not use her personal power too much. She was wearing the little tiger's clothes and said seriously, "Auntie Xiao, can I take the test like little brother did before? Woolly Buddha said that I have to follow the rules. If I pass, Auntie Xiao will let me go to the 3rd grade, okay? This way when I beat people up, I won't have so many scruples." I just saw that the children in the 3rd grade are very strong like Master Li. Mother Xiao was amused by the little girl's seriousness, and did not know whether to laugh or cry. When Master Li heard this from the side, he felt that he had fallen into a deep pit. After all, Mother Xiao was an adult, so she thought more. She turned her head and asked Bai Juan, "Little Juan, what do you think? Do you also agree with little Aju skipping a grade? If she could not keep up, it would be very difficult for little Aju to study." Auntie Xiao, don't worry. I will teach her well. Mother Xiao understood what Bai Juan meant when he said such polite words. It was said that little Juan doted on the child. Today, she saw that he lived up to his reputation. Then let's pass the test first. She had to rely on her strength to speak. This way, she would not be a laughingstock. Little Aju immediately nodded in agreement. Don't expect to see the determination of a tough girl to learn. In little Aju's words, she was going to be a temple abbot in the future. How could she not even pass an exam? In fact, there were other students who skipped grades in primary school. But under normal circumstances, they would only skip one grade. There was no one like her, who had never been to school before, and went straight to third grade as soon as she came. Among the 3 students taking the exam, Aju was the youngest. She was writing the test paper in a daze. Because he used to be a little monk, the child had developed the habit of knocking his head with a pencil. Li Hailu, Xiao Lin, and the others were all watching outside the classroom. Li Hailu had always felt that things like exams were specially created to torture people. He really did not understand why little Aju was so passionate about exams. She was really like who raised her. She had the same hobby as Lord Bai. However, to be honest, Li Hailu was still a little worried. His fingers were on the window as he said to Xiao Lin very seriously. Will Aju be okay? Do you want us to help her cheat? Help her cheat. Xiao Lin glanced at him indifferently. Don't forget. There was one time when you didn't know how to write. It was Aju who taught you. Li Hailu was really angry. He wanted to help their child, so why was he being attacked again? In any case, the few of them had been together for a long time, so they would kick each other without saying a word. After saying a few words, they started to make a fuss. Bai Juan only stood quietly in the corridor, looking at the little girl who was scratching her head. He was afraid that little Aju would be hungry if she took too long to do the questions. Fortunately, the number of questions was not big, and little Aju was the first to hand in the paper. After giving the teacher the paper, she ran out of the classroom like a little tiger and threw herself straight into Bai Juan's arms. Bai Juan reached out and caught the child. Are the questions difficult? They're okay. Little Aju raised her little face. It's just that I got hungry as I was writing, so I didn't write the questions in front. Li Hailu was puzzled. You didn't write the questions in front? Shouldn't it be that you didn't write the questions in the back? Little brother said that exams are not the same thing as studying. Exams are about strategy. The questions in the back are more points than the ones in the front. You have to do the questions with more points correctly. When the time comes, even if you don't have time or if an accident happens, it doesn't matter if you lose a few points. After little Aju finished speaking, she blinked her big eyes and said to Bai Juan, Little brother, why doesn't Li Hailu understand such a simple principle? Bai Juan picked up the child and said as he walked, Because he's stupid. Li Hailu was speechless. Because Xiao Lin was there, they knew the results of the exam on the first day. Although little Aju did not do the best in the exam, she still exceeded the cutoff score by a lot. There was no problem for her to directly enter the third grade. For this reason, the Bai family specially held a celebration party. After learning the news of skipping a grade, Li Hailu was beaten up by his father again. Because they had to check the score before entering junior high school. Li Hailu's score was simply incomparable to little Aju's. Li Hailu felt that he was a scam. Why did he have to have such a group of top students by his side? It was one thing for Master Bai to be a freak. Even the child he raised was so super. He would not play with him anymore in the future. He would blacklist him. Although he said that when school started, Li Hailu still followed Bai Juan to send little Aju to the classroom. The third grade children all looked at each other, and then turned their gazes to little Aju. Everyone's eyes were filled with curiosity. At first, Mother Xiao was worried that little Aju would not be able to withstand the gazes of her classmates. Later, she was not worried about this. She began to worry about how she would deal with it if another little boy came over and said that little Aju had beaten him to tears. A third-grade boy was beaten to tears by a 6-year-old girl. This, little Aju had always relied on her martial arts to suppress others. When the little girls in the class were bullied, that little shadow would immediately rush out. For this reason, Little Aju successfully became the class belle of their class. You didn't hear wrongly. She was the class belle. This was because all the boys in the class combined were not as strong as Little Aju. Moreover, she was likable to begin with. Although she liked to sleep in class, she was never noisy. She would only meditate occasionally. She also seriously told the teacher the reason why she had to meditate in class. To put it simply, she was going to be a temple abbot in the future. She had to recite scriptures every day. Otherwise, her Buddha would abandon her. Chapter 1148. In addition, their class belle also liked to eat very much. Whatever was given to her, she would politely say thank you, and then recite Amitabha. She was like a little monk begging for alms. When her soft and fair cheeks puffed up, she was very cute. Let's not talk about how the boys in the class felt about Little Aju for the time being. For example, the girls who were protected by her would surround her after class. They were afraid that the little girl would fall when she walked. They also never let Little Aju go to the toilet by herself. Someone had to follow her. Everyone in the class knew that Little Aju had an older brother. He was not her biological brother. He was indeed a famous figure in the school. In the past, when he was in the primary school, many people already knew about him. Now that he had been promoted to the middle school, his name was not only known by the people in the main school. Even the people from other schools were no stranger to the name Baijuan. But there was one thing that was very regrettable. That was that Baijuan had a girlfriend. It was said that he was the one being chased. It happened in the first week of middle school. A girl blocked him in the corridor of the classroom. This girl was no stranger to anyone. Her surname was Yin Qin. Her mother was a celebrity, and her father was an official. They had a special car to send her to and from school. The little girl was very beautiful. Her lips were red and her teeth were white. She was a little like a girl in a girl group. She was very energetic. The most precious thing was that she was very smart. She knew how to start with the people around Baijuan. She played very well with Li Hailu and the others. They even played games together. In order to get close to Baijuan, she seemed to have done everything she could. She had a kind of desperation. No one knew what the truth was. But one thing was that Yin Qin released the news that she was Baijuan's girlfriend. Baijuan did not come out to object. This was probably the meaning of tacit agreement. Therefore, the next day, the middle school department was in an uproar. It was not only the first year. Even some of the second-year seniors wanted to have a good talk with Yin Qin. There was probably no one who would not like a boy like Baijuan. Other than his face that made girls' hearts beat faster when they looked at him. The most important thing was the noble temperament that he brought out. He did not look like a boy of their age at all. Baijuan was very quiet, and his personality was even a little indifferent. But it was precisely because of this that girls were captivated. In addition, when he was treating his younger sister, his eyes were always filled with unrelenting gentleness. Therefore, these young girls who had yet to experience love would think that if they were to become his girlfriend one day, would he also be very gentle? Unfortunately, he was already taken. In addition, Yin Qin was the one who was supported by all the girls. Of course, they wouldn't do anything to avoid being implicated. Yin Qin seemed to be a nice person. She had a good temper and liked to act coquettishly. She was also pretty. But because there was one time when someone confessed to Baijuan, she incited the entire class to stop talking to that girl. Gradually, it seemed that fewer and fewer people were sending love letters to Baijuan. The name Yin Qin would often appear together with Baijuan. Ring, ring, ring. It was another Friday. When the bell rang, all the students were like grasshoppers in a frying pan. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry to go home. Bang! Yin Qin walked over from the next class. With a faint smile, she placed her school bag on the desk of Li Hailu and the others. There's no class tomorrow, and the weather is so good today. Do you want to go to Starbucks with us to do homework? Lily and the others are going. You and Baijuan should come too. How about it? Oh right, you can also call our young master Xiao. It's said that his English is especially good. Is that true? Lindsay has liked to speak English since she was young. Li Heila's eyes were very bright. Why? The girls in your class want to learn English. Yin Qin took the opportunity to sit opposite him, and Bai Juan. Didn't you give me a lot of English homework this time? I have no problem. My mother has been teaching me since I was young. The other girls can't keep up. Let's have one-on-one tutoring. How about it? Okay. Please forgive children at this age. They were shy and had the urge to understand female classmates. Li Hailu was a typical example. Where's the Starbucks? It's on the road in front of the school. Let's not go home. We'll eat dinner outside. We're all carrying school bags and wearing school uniforms. It's not worth it to go home and change. As Yin Qin said this, she looked at Bai Juan. Master Bai, what do you think? It was unknown when Yin Qin started to call Bai Juan Master Bai like Li Hailu and the others. Bai Juan lowered his eyes. His side profile was as white as jade, and he had the clear aura of a youth. You guys go. I don't have time. You're going to pick up your sister again? Yin Qin asked with a light smile. Why don't you put a Jew down and come out again? We'll wait for you at the Starbucks. No need. You guys can play. Bai Juan slung the black shoulder bag on his left shoulder. His back was straight like a pine tree. The school uniform of the Imperial Capital First High School was originally of better quality than the school uniforms of other high schools. In addition, Bai Juan's temperament was there. His every move made people want to follow his figure. Yin Qin sat there and watched his back gradually disappear into the corridor of the classroom. Her fingers on the table were tightly clenched. However, she still had a smile on her face. She pretended to ask Li Hailu casually, I heard that a Jew is very smart and can go home by herself. Why does she always let Bai Juan send her home? She really clings to her brother. When I was young, I also clung to my brother, but it wasn't to this extent. Did something happen in the past? Nothing happened, Li Hailu replied casually. Yin Qin narrowed her eyes, and her gaze also changed. Her long line of sight had a faint light, and no one knew what she was thinking. In the elementary school, a Jew was wiping the blackboard. Because she was too small, she moved a chair over. The little girl stepped on it and exerted force with her hand. Crack! The blackboard cracked. The boy next to her looked at her with a tearless face. A Jew, Guanyin Bodhisattva, class bell. Can you sit aside for a while? This is already the fourth blackboard that you have broken. The teacher said that if the blackboard cracks again, he will make me wipe the blackboard for a semester. I beg you, let me do it myself. A Jew just wanted to help, but it seemed that the more she helped, the more trouble she got. The child had no choice. She stretched out her little claws and scratched her big head. Then, she gave the blackboard to the boy and stood there, looking for something else to do. Helpless, everyone was on guard against their class bell coming to cause trouble again. In the end, someone shouted, Bai Juan is here. Only then did a Jew carry her small tortoise-shell school bag and look out of the classroom with bright eyes. Chapter 1149. Bai Juan was wearing his school uniform with one hand in his belt. He just stood in the corridor. The afterglow of the dusk scattered on his face, making people think of the word clean. He looked at little Jew with a smile. In his hand was the snack bean bun that he had bought for the child. The people here stopped what they were doing and looked at young Master Bai. Although Bai Juan came to pick up his sister every day, his handsome face was always not enough. Little Jew originally wanted to rush out, but she still had to clean up, so she gestured to Bai Juan, meaning that he should wait for a while. Are you on duty today? Bai Juan asked the third-grade students. Then I'll wait here. You guys sweep the floor first, and let little Jew out later. The boy who was asked immediately shook his head and said, Senior brother, we don't need little Jew's help. Really? We can completely clean the classroom. Please quickly take the class bell away. The smart Bai Juan immediately understood the meaning behind his words. He smiled at little Jew and said, I think this side is also clean. Just leave the rest to the students. Auntie Wang made fried meatballs today. She just called me and asked me to bring you back early. Moreover, didn't we agree to buy something for Master today? Didn't we say tomorrow? Little Jew held the broom and raised her pink and tender little face. She scratched her head in confusion. Bai Juan took the opportunity to walk in and held the child's hand. Then, he handed the broom to the little boy beside him and said calmly, It's today. You remembered wrongly. When little Aju heard this, her little brows furrowed. Baijuan bent down and hugged the child. He smiled faintly. Have you ever thought about what to buy for Master? Buy yogurt and small cakes. The little one said seriously. Master loves to eat sweet things. When those kind and charitable benefactors burn incense, he always stealthily eats them. Baijuan agreed as he emptied a hand and gestured to the person behind him. The third-grade students really admired Baijuan. With just a few simple words, he had coaxed the little class belle. As expected, people in junior high were different. Everyone had been a child before. When they were children, everyone looked forward to growing up as soon as possible. Therefore, those junior high school students became the people they wanted to be the most. Baijuan was undoubtedly the best candidate. Little Aju was actually heavier than an ordinary child. However, for Lord Bai, who had been touching guns since he was young, carrying Aju with one hand was not a big deal. Children were easily hungry. The only thing Baijuan was worried about in class was that the child would not have anything to eat. Fortunately, his Aju was popular, and the students in the class would give her snacks to eat. Now, little Aju was holding a bean bun in her hand and eating it with her big eyes. She was extremely obedient. The few teachers in the school basically knew that Baijuan brought the child to school. Even if they doted on him so much, it was inevitable that they would take a few more glances at him. You really can't find any fault with this older brother. Adjutant Zhang was already waiting outside the school in his car. When he saw young Master and Miss coming out, he immediately opened the car door. Baijuan hugged Aju and said in a good mood, Uncle Zhang, let's not go home directly today. Let's go to the dessert shop first. Deal. Vice Commander Zhang was sent by Grandpa Bai to protect Baijuan. He has been following Baijuan since he was young. He knows that young Master doesn't eat sweet things. He wants to buy this for Mississippi. After little Aju finished eating the bean bun, she licked her little claws. Baijuan frowned, but his voice was gentle. He pulled the child's hand over. If you continue to be so unhygienic in the future, Buddha won't love you anymore. Little Aju tilted her head and lowered her eyes to lick again. However, this time, she didn't lick her palm, but Baijuan's. Baijuan really couldn't do anything to her. He hugged the little girl, and the smile at the corner of his mouth was so obvious. Adjutant Zhang couldn't help but sigh. It had only been a year. In a year's time, others didn't know, but they knew very well how much the young Master had changed. The two children bought the yogurt cake and went home. Little Aju took the most things, and she was still holding Baijuan's school bag in her hand. However, when she opened the door, the child was stunned, because a person she had never seen before appeared. You're Baijuan's sister, right? You're so cute. The person who spoke was none other than Yin Qin. She bent down and pinched little Aju's face with her fingers. Little Aju paused for a moment and turned around to look at Baijuan behind her. Baijuan's expression was very indifferent. Why are you here? Oh, I discussed with Li Hailu and felt that Starbucks was too inconvenient. Since you can't go, we might as well come directly to your house. Yin Qin smiled and put her hands behind her back. And I wanted to see little Aju. Now that I've seen her today, she's indeed my type. Why is she so beautiful? Little Aju didn't understand what was going on, but from the looks of it, she should be an acquaintance of Baijuan. Is Baijuan's bag especially heavy? Let me take it. You guys come in quickly, Yin Qin said as she took the bag from little Aju's hand. Little Aju was stunned for a moment. Then she carried her little turtle shell into the room. There were many people in the living room. Two of them were Yin Qin's friends, and the other were Li Hailu and Xiaolin. Xiaolin was indeed like what Li Hailu had said. He never had any expression on his face, except when he saw little Aju. In the courtyard, other than Baijuan, Xiaolin and Li Hailu were the best to little Aju. When Xiaolin saw the child come in, a smile appeared on his face. Aju, come here and see what brother Xiaolin bought for you. Little Aju's eyes lit up as she looked at the book in Xiaolin's hand. There's even woolly Buddha printed on it. I brought it back from the temple. Xiaolin smiled and put his arm around the child's shoulder. Look at the Buddhist scriptures on the back, and the yellow paper on the front. You can copy the scriptures on it or write a diary. It could be seen that little Aju liked this gift very much. She just stayed by Shaolin's side and did not come out. From afar, it looked like she was being hugged by Shaolin. Bai Zhuan poured a glass of water. When he walked over, this was the scene he saw. His footsteps paused for a moment before he reached out and hugged the child. Aju, what are you looking at? The Buddhist scriptures that Brother Shaolin gave me. The little girl raised her little hand high, as if she was presenting a treasure. Brother, smell it. Does it smell like a temple? Bai Zhuan leaned over and sniffed it. The corners of his mouth curled up. Yes, it does smell like sandalwood. However, Aju, you've forgotten that things like scriptures have to be sincerely requested. If others give it to you, it won't have any effect. Little Aju listened to Bai Zhuan's words and looked at the newly obtained scripture in her hand. Then, she glanced in Shaolin's direction. Even though she was reluctant to part with it, she still stretched out her little hand. Brother Shaolin is right. This scripture was requested by Brother Shaolin. Chapter 1150. Shaolin paused and glanced at Bai Zhuan first. Then he reached out and took the scripture book. It's okay. Brother Shaolin has other gifts here. Hearing this, the child's little claws reached out again. Her beautiful big eyes lit up, and she was very cute. What other gifts do you have? Bai Zhuan looked at his empty hand and raised his eyes to meet Shaolin's gaze. Shaolin seemed to have discovered something, and the smile on his thin lips deepened. That's right. There's a pencil here. It's the core of a lotus seed. Smell it and see if it smells like your favorite lotus seed. Little Aju lay on the ground and sniffed with all her might like a little hamster. In the end, it was Bai Zhuan who picked her up and brought her upstairs with the excuse that she needed to change her clothes after eating. Yin Qin's two friends ate a piece of fruit before using their left hands to touch little Tyrant, who was still teaching. Let's not be third wheels later, okay? What third wheels? Little Tyrant Li was at a loss. The two girls signaled Yin Qin with their eyes and then glanced upstairs. Little Tyrant Li instantly understood, but he did not agree. Master Bai doesn't like people to do anything in front of little Aju. Save it. Let's make it clear first. You want to do the questions, so I brought you here. Bai Zhuan doesn't like anyone to come to the Bai family. So what? Our goddess Qin is his girlfriend. The two girls chuckled and said, he can't be more important than his girlfriend, right? I saw that Bai Zhuan was quite happy to see goddess Qin just now. Bam! Little Tyrant Li put down the pen in his hand heavily. The sound was so loud that it scared the two girls. What do you mean by raising a sister? Little Tyrant Li's face darkened, and he was actually a little fierce. Watch your words. That's our biological sister. Not to mention the two girls. Even Yin Qin did not expect little Tyrant Li's reaction to be so big. She immediately said to little Gangster Li, of course she's my biological sister. I also like little Aju. Didn't we come to the Bai family because we wanted to see little Aju? They said that raising a little sister means adoption. Let's do the questions. When little Aju comes down later, how about we braid her for her? Only then did Li Hailu calm down, but he was not as enthusiastic as before. If this had happened before, he would have been very happy to have so many girls. Just a moment ago, he thought that it was his charm that had worked. Now he felt uncomfortable in his heart. He couldn't tell what was wrong, but he concluded that he would never bring a girl to the Bai family again. Shaolin was the one who sat the calmest. He didn't care about these girls at all. The Xiao family was different from the Li family. They were born to walk the political path. Shaolin was destined to mature faster than many people. At this moment, he was thinking about something, and this matter had a very direct relationship with Bai Zhuan. After a while, little Aju changed into her pajamas and walked down. Everyone knew what kind of pajamas little Aju was wearing. It was either a bear, a cat, or a little tiger. Today little Aju was wearing kitten pajamas. Her little tail could melt a person's heart. Auntie Wang was still busy in the kitchen. When she looked up, she saw little Aju staggering towards her. She was holding a yogurt cake in her little hand, which meant that she wanted to give it to Auntie Wang. Auntie Wang opened her mouth and smiled. It's delicious. I helped Auntie Wang get the bowl. Little Aju liked to stand by the kitchen. Bai Zhuan and Shaolin knew this, so they didn't care. On the other hand, Although Yen Qin was sitting in the living room writing questions, she would still look over from time to time. She did not understand why this child was so close to an auntie who was cooking. Thinking of this, Yen Qin stood up and walked to the kitchen. She asked with a smile, "Auntie Wang, is there anything you need our help with?" No. Miss Yen, right? Go and sit down. I'll be done soon." Auntie Wang was busy turning the dishes around. Little Aju stood there and waited. As soon as the plate was full, the child immediately picked it up with both hands and placed the food on the dining table like a small top. Seeing this, Yen Qin turned her eyes and smiled again. "Aju, come, sister will help you." Little Aju looked at her and stopped. Then, she shook her head and said very seriously, "I'm going to be an abbot in the future. Woolly Buddha said that you have to do your own things." Yen Qin had never seen such a strange child, who would talk about Buddha all day long. Moreover, she always felt that this child was a little too clingy to Bai Juan. She was clearly not his biological child. Yen Qin lowered her eyes, and a sharp light flashed in her eyes. "Young master." Auntie Wang wiped her hands on her apron. "It's time for dinner. I've cooked a lot of dishes today. In a while, I'll go to the canteen in the courtyard to buy some steamed buns for Mississippi. There's a lot of steamed rice, and there are sweet potatoes in it. Miss likes to eat them." Auntie Wang really doted on her little Aju. Bai Juan had once accidentally burned the child's mouth when he was feeding her. Now whatever little Aju ate had to go into his mouth first. Now that he heard Auntie Wang's reminder, of course, he immediately nodded. Little Aju had always been obedient. She held her small bowl and sat on the small wooden chair that was exclusive to her. Her lotus root-like calves swayed back and forth. Bai Juan looked at her hands. Seeing that they were clean, he did not say anything. He put down the book in his hand and let everyone eat. The Bai family had always been good at treating guests. Their upbringing was very strict. Since they were already here, of course, they would make proper arrangements. The table full of dishes were all vegetarian. The presentation of the dishes was very beautiful. The two female students sat down. Both of them were surprised. "The vegetarian dishes are so beautiful. Don't the Bai family eat meat?" Little Aju believes in Buddha. Shaolin's words could be considered an explanation. One of the female students sat opposite him with a red face. The other female student was also observant. She pushed Yen Qin and asked her to go over and sit with Bai Juan. However, there was a problem. Little Aju was sitting next to Bai Juan. When the female student saw this, she smiled at the little girl. "Little Aju, can you come over and let your sister Yin talk to your brother for a while?" Little Aju's little claws had just touched her small bowl. She thought that she was going to eat. When she heard the female student's words, she raised her little face and was a little dazed. Shaolin looked at the child. Before Bai Juan could speak, he smiled and said, "Then let little Aju sit with me." When he said this, he was looking at Bai Juan. Bai Juan did not look at anyone. He directly picked up the spoon beside little Aju. He first blew on it, then fed the rice in the spoon into little Aju's mouth. His voice was cold. "If you want to eat, sit down. If you don't want to, go out." Chapter 1151. It was just a few words, but the coldness in them made the girls pause for a moment. The atmosphere was inevitably a little solemn. After all, they had never seen Bai Juan angry before. Yen Qin also withdrew her hand. She was smart and knew how to resolve the awkwardness. She smiled and said, "This position is pretty good. Wow, this dish tastes so good." Bai Juan ignored her. It should be said that in Bai Juan's eyes, there was no one else other than a Jew. He took out a tissue and wiped the child's mouth. Then he used a spoon to scoop some vegetable soup and sprinkled it into the white rice. He mixed it and fed it to the little girl. A Jew opened her small mouth at the right time and narrowed her big eyes. After chewing for a while, her cheeks were bulging. She secretly glanced at Bai Juan again. Bai Juan knew that his attitude was not right. He was worried that he would scare the child, so he lowered his voice. "Do you want to eat another cauliflower?" A Jew nodded her little head. Only then did Bai Juan disperse the chill in his body. He picked up a green cauliflower on the child's plate. Little Aju ate seriously, She bit one end of the cauliflower and chewed it. Bai Juan saw that she was having a hard time eating. He held her small hand with a faint smile, and very patiently helped her push the cauliflower away. At that moment, everyone could feel the warmth emitted from Bai Juan's body. Yanqing watched this scene, and tightened her grip on her chopsticks. The other two girls also felt that Bai Juan doted on his sister too much. Just because of such a child he embarrassed them. It was a little too much. Bai Juan, a Jew is already 6 years old, right? Yanqing smiled and held her cheek. She's really cute. I've always wanted such a sister. But a Jew, you're already so old. It's not good to always let your brother feed you. We girls have to be independent. Hearing this, a Jew turned her head and glanced at Yanqing. The little tail behind her swayed. She did not say anything, and directly took the small spoon in Bai Juan's hand. She dug the rice for herself bit by bit, and ate it with great relish. However, at this moment, Bai Juan's deep eyes gradually condensed into a true coldness. Li Hailu always felt that something was wrong, but he could not tell what exactly was wrong. Only Xiaolin glanced at Bai Juan's side profile full of thoughts. When little Aju was eating, her small body was very straight, as if she was born this way. Her etiquette at the dining table was very good. Without Bai Juan feeding her, she ate quickly. In just a few bites, she finished a large bowl of rice. After finishing 3 big bowls of rice, she took another bean paste bun in her mouth, and was about to wash her small clothes. She did not let Bai Juan carry her anymore. She took her small clothes and small wooden basin. When she ran, her small tail was still wagging. Bai Juan looked at his empty hand, and straightened his back, as if he was enduring something. But as long as a Jew was around, he would not get angry. This was his principle. He knew too well how important a complete family was to a child. He wanted to give little Aju everything he could. First of all, he could not let the child see him angry. Little Aju had always liked to wash clothes. This was probably the child's nature towards water. She wagged her little tail, and pressed those little clothes into the small wooden basin one by one, rubbing them with all her might. Bai Juan reached out his hand, but she insisted on doing it herself. Her little face was very serious, as if she was completing a very great thing. On the other hand, the 3 girls laughed at the side. Little Aju, you don't have to be like this in front of your brother, right? You're already obedient enough. You don't even have to do Auntie's things. Come here and talk to us. We'll comb your beautiful princess hair. Yanqing wanted to get close to little Aju. After all, a child was definitely very easy to bribe. Unexpectedly, little Aju shook her little head and raised her little face to say, I want to wash clothes. Moreover, monks can't comb their hair. It will break the precepts. The smile on Yanqing's face froze for a moment. Then she bent down again. Then let me help you wash your clothes. I'll send them into the washing machine, so that your brother doesn't have to think about you all the time. He still has to teach the other sisters English. Is that okay? When little Aju heard this, she raised her little face and looked at Bai Juan. Then she nodded. After saying that, little Aju lowered her little head and folded her little clothes. Then, she swayed her little body and walked to the sink. She took out her little toothbrush and began to brush her teeth. Usually, Bai Juan was the one who did these things. Now, seeing that the child did not let him help with anything, even Bai Juan's fingers stiffened. Auntie Wang also noticed the strange behavior of the 2 children. She brought the fruit plate over and looked over. Miss, why didn't you let young master wash your face for you? Didn't you just say that you wanted to let young master smell the new handmade soap? I want to wash it myself in the future. Little Aju held her little fingers and counted seriously. And eating and bathing, I want to do it myself. Auntie Wang was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously looked at the young master, who was standing beside her. Bai Juan felt that his throat was a little sore. He lowered his eyes and looked at the little girl. You've already done everything yourself. What else do you want me to do? Little Aju blinked and did not say anything. She directly opened the door to watch, which meant that she wanted to take a bath. Bai Juan suppressed his anger. He would never get angry at little Aju. Moreover, the child was not wrong at all in this matter. Yanqing planned to come to the Bai family and get along well with Bai Juan. Who would have thought that the result was not what she wanted at all? In the end, it was still the few of them who gathered in the living room to do homework. After sitting for a while, Yanqing asked Master Li, who was beside her, "Where's Baizhuan?" Master Li did not say anything. He only wanted to leave now. If it were not for the fact that they were in the same class, he really wanted to kick these people out too. Master Bai's expression was not good. Who knew what would happen later? In any case, he had a bad feeling about this. Could this be the legendary beast-like intuition? Yanqing saw that Master Li was lowering his head and not saying anything, so she was about to stand up. At this time, Shaolin glanced at her. "I advise you to put away whatever thoughts you have first. Otherwise, things will get too ugly later, and you won't be able to get out of the embarrassing situation. After all, you are the legendary girlfriend of Baizhuan, aren't you?" Even if Yanqing was scheming, she was still a little girl in her first year of junior high school. To be honest, she and Shaolin were not on the same level. She completely could not understand the other meaning of Shaolin's words. However, she still sat down. It was not for anything else, but because she did not know what had happened. If she did too much, she would make a mistake. On the other side, little Aju washed herself clean in a short while. Her black hair was messy, and her big eyes were very beautiful. She was so exquisite that she looked like a little character in a comic book. The furry pajamas on her body made her look even cuter. Baizhuan picked up the towel beside him and wanted to dry her hair. However, little Aju reached out and stopped him. Chapter 1152. The child was a man of his word. He did his job very neatly. Yanqing thought that little Aju handed the matter to Baizhuan because she didn't know how to do anything. However, she didn't know that little Aju had grown up in a temple. In the temple, little Aju had always done her own things. She came to the Bai family and asked Baizhuan for help only because Baizhuan liked it. Yanqing, who thought that she was smart, thought that she had helped Baizhuan teach the right child this time. After a while, Baizhuan should have time to accompany them. It had to be said that Yanqing's fantasy was good. However, when Baizhuan was about to hold the child and tell her a bedtime story, little Aju seriously requested to sleep in separate beds with Baizhuan. Baizhuan's beautiful eyes completely darkened. Aju wants to sleep by herself? Didn't that sister just say that girls have to be independent? There are so many things for little brother to do. Little brother will be very tired, and I will also delay little brother's time. What if I'm not afraid of being delayed by Aju? Aju didn't say anything. She looked at Baizhuan for a while, then shook her head. She pulled the small blanket over her body, which meant that she only wanted to sleep by herself. Baizhuan had never lost his temper with the little girl. Even now, his left hand was already clenched into a fist by himself. He only bent down and kissed little Aju's forehead. Alright, since Aju likes it. Aju's ears drooped and her body curled up. The silent rejection made Baizhuan's fingers stiffen. He stood up with him and walked downstairs. There was no joy or anger on his face. However, Auntie Wang, who was familiar with him, clearly realized that the young master was not in a good mood. When the two girls saw him, they still had a smile on their faces. Baizhuan, you're finally down. Your sister is really clingy to you. Now that Yanqing said that, she's become much more sensible. Yanqing also looked at Baizhuan with a slightly red face. I have a question here that I don't know. Teach me. Anyway, little Aju is also going up. After hearing this sentence, Baizhuan didn't care about the Bai family's hospitality. He looked at them coldly and said in a deep voice, "Who brought these three people in?" These girls had never seen Baizhuan get angry before. In the past, when they saw him in school, he always had an indifferent expression. Otherwise, he would be extremely gentle to the children. No one would have thought that when he was angry, he would be even more terrifying than an adult. The young man's face was filled with ice. I'll ask you one more time. Who brought these three people in? Li Hailu shrunk his neck and then stood up. Don't be angry. This matter. Take them all away. Baizhuan's voice was very cold, so cold that it made people feel a chill in their hearts. Even those who didn't know what was going on knew that this time, he was really angry. How could he not be popular? The child that he raised, in the end, Didn't even allow him to touch a finger. All right, since these people dared to make things difficult for him, he would make them unhappy as well. The girls seemed to be frightened, but they were all pampered and spoiled. Baijuan, aren't you going a little too far? Forget about us. Yanqing is your girlfriend. How can you treat her like this? Baijuan sneered. Girlfriend? It seems that someone needs to explain how this word came about. Yanqing, when you confessed, how did I reject you? Do you need me to repeat it again? The blood on Yanqing's face was drained. She opened her mouth. This matter I didn't clarify the rumors that you spread outside. I just didn't want to go through so much trouble. Baijuan looked at her with his deep eyes. But who allowed you to come to my house and use those methods of yours? Student Yan, who do you think you are? You bastard. Yanqing was really embarrassed by Baijuan's attitude. She directly ran out of the Bai family's house in tears. The coldness on Baijuan's face had not disappeared. He was not happy that someone came to disturb him and a Jew. The Bai family's upbringing had made him endure it. In the end, these three people actually went overboard and set their sights on little Aju. Did they think that he Baijuan was dead? When the other two girls saw that Yanqing had run away, they quickly put away their things. Their thoughts were very chaotic. It turned out that Baijuan had rejected Yanqing. She was not Baijuan's girlfriend. Thinking about it carefully, these two people did not seem to have been alone before. In other words, Yanqing had been spreading rumors. Oh my God, what kind of secret did they know? The two girls looked at each other and hugged their books in shock. The chill on Baijuan's body did not decrease at all because of the three girls' departure. He called the school. This was the first time he used the Bai family's power to ask the principal to change his class. He did not have any requirements for the class, as long as it was close to the primary school. As for Yanqing, Baijuan had thousands of ways to let her know what would happen if she had designs on a Jew. Li Hailu felt that his intuition was not wrong at all. Master Bai was really angry. Otherwise, even if it was to maintain his upbringing, he would not have chased people away. Shaolin did not say anything the whole time. He only looked at Baijuan with a deeper meaning in his eyes. Baijuan also glanced at him. Take your pencil too. Aju doesn't need it. Shaolin immediately smiled. Okay, I'll take it. But Baijuan, let's make it clear. I also like Aju very much. There are so many people who like her. Baijuan raised his eyebrows and smiled as well. You're just one of them, and I'm her guardian. In other words, you better behave yourself, understand? Shaolin looked at the back and shook his head. Well, Baijuan cared more about Aju than he had imagined. Was it that simple to have a sister complex? Why did he feel that this was not the case? After Baijuan finished dealing with these things, he remembered that his voice might have been a little loud. He glanced at Auntie Wang, who was standing by the stairs, and lowered his voice. What about her? Is she asleep? Auntie Wang looked at the cautious Baijuan and smiled. How can she sleep? She's probably still waiting for young master. After saying that, she subconsciously looked at the young man's expression. Seeing that his lines had softened a little, she continued. Miss has been here for so long. For almost a year, young master has been personally taking care of her. I'm already used to it. As soon as young master left, the child was hugging the small blanket in a daze. She didn't even sleep. She must be reluctant to part with young master. After Baijuan heard this, his eyes finally warmed up. He reached out and pushed the door open. He saw the little girl rolling on the bed, practicing martial arts. Her little tail was swaying on the bed. After seeing Baijuan come in, Aju stopped. Her little face was cute, and there was a lock of hair on her head that stood up. Chapter 1153. Have you ever seen a little tiger fall? Little Aju looked like that now. Baijuan looked at her little face, and the anger in his heart finally subsided. He knew that the child had eaten very little just now, so he specially brought her a yogurt cake. He didn't care how Auntie Wang usually nagged him, saying that he couldn't spoil the child too much, especially not letting her eat at night. Otherwise her teeth would hurt. Baijuan also knew his limits. She should be fine after eating a little. Little Aju stared at the cake, and her eyes lit up. Baijuan smiled faintly, and reached out to straighten the child. Do you want to eat? Little Aju pricked up her little ears and nodded her head vigorously. Baizhuan had always been patient with children. He held a spoon and dug for her. Little Aju ate very happily. She lowered her long eyelashes and ate one piece. When it was not enough, she ate another piece. She ate until her little belly was full. Only then did she burp and lean on Baizhuan's body. Aju, I promise you that in the future, no one will disturb us in this house. Baizhuan wiped the child's mouth. So there are some things that you don't have to do yourself, understand? Little Aju tilted her big head. If that's the case, won't it take up little brother's time? Little brother's time is used to be taken up by you. Baizhuan also got on the bed and let the little girl lie on his body. Didn't we agree that we are a family? Of course, a family has to take up each other's time. Little Aju felt that Baizhuan was right, but there was one thing. What if little brother has a girlfriend? I won't have a girlfriend. Baizhuan's voice was very indifferent. Didn't you also say that the women at the foot of the mountain are tigers? Little Aju felt that something was not right. That's not the logic. Master Li said that everyone has to have a girlfriend. I'm a monk, so I stay away from girls. Little brother is not a monk. I'm your senior brother. Have you forgotten? Master Bai automatically turned on his coaxing mode. I'm also a monk, at least half of one. When little Aju heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up, and her little face was very serious. Then little brother, be careful in the future. You can't get close to girls again. Woolly Buddha said that appearance is emptiness, and emptiness is appearance. You can't break the precept, understand? I see that little brother's performance is not very good recently. I will look after little brother on behalf of Buddha. Baizhuan listened to the child's words and nodded to himself. He couldn't help but laugh. Yes, then let's sleep. Little Aju crawled in Baizhuan's arms and handed the Little Prince illustration book on the bedside table to Baizhuan. She meant that she wanted Baizhuan to tell her a bedtime story. Baizhuan smiled faintly and opened the illustration book. The youth's voice was crisp and pleasant. Little Aju just leaned in his arms and listened seriously. After listening for a while, her eyes began to get heavy, and her little head was nodding. Baizhuan pushed away the black hair on Aju's head and closed his eyes as well. The two children were finally reconciled. Auntie Wang felt gratified as she watched. If little Aju insisted on doing her own thing, no one knew what would happen to the young master. In the morning, little Aju was holding a piece of toast in her mouth as usual. Her small hands were holding Baizhuan's school bag, and her eyes were big. She liked to take Baizhuan's school bag. Baizhuan squatted down and tied the child's shoelaces with his slender and fair fingers. The sun shone down on the two of them, pulling their shadows very long. As the class belle of the 3rd grade, little Aju was never late for school. It was just that she loved to sleep in class and was more violent. This should be something that everyone knew. To put it simply, those who could make a move would never make a fuss. On this day, little Aju was eating the snacks given to her by the next table. In fact, all the 3rd grade students had been taken care of by the school bell. The school bell had gently asked them to take care of the class bell. So how could they not agree? She was their idol. Of course, their idol also said that no boys were allowed to get close to the class bell. At that time, they wanted to say that they were also boys. Could it be that in the eyes of the school bell, they were not even boys? When the 3rd grade students thought of this, they were extremely depressed. The bell rang, and the class bell said that she was going out to play football. Although the class bell was small, she exercised more than all the boys in their class combined. One of the boys did not want to recall his embarrassing scene. In short, where the class bell was, there would be songs and laughter. This was the most unique thing about the 3rd grade class A. Originally, everything was very cheerful, but just as little Aju lowered her head to eat the second bag of small melon seeds, Yanqin appeared, along with the two girls behind her. They were all first-year students, so of course, the students in the class would tiptoe to look. Aju. Yanqin's eyes were red, as if she had just cried. Help me put in a good word for your brother. That day at your house, I didn't have any other intentions. I just felt that it was best for girls not to always rely on others. Your brother dotes on you so much, So he must have thought that I was insinuating about you. In fact, I just felt that he usually has to study and take care of you. Many times, even when we have gatherings, he doesn't come out. He must be too tired. That's why he said that to you at your house. Little Aju was holding a small melon seed in her mouth. Her face was stunned for a moment. The two girls who followed Yanqin were not the two girls who went to the Bai family that day. They did not know what was going on. In addition, they liked to form cliques in school. They would isolate whoever they did not like. It was not that there were no such students in the middle school department. They were in the same circle as Yanqin. So of course, they would speak up for her. One of the girls saw that little Aju was standing there and did not speak. So she could not help but speak up. Aju, right? You are Baijuan's sister, which means you are our sister. However, you should at least be sensible, right? Now because of you, your brother is going to break up with your sister Yanqin. How about you put in a good word for your sister Yanqin? We will take you to eat Burger King. How about it? When the male student next to her heard this, he felt that the other party did not come with good intentions. He glanced at their little class bell and took a step forward to block her. If there's anything, you should look for the teacher. Aju is still young, so she doesn't understand what you're talking about. After the girl heard this, she glanced at little Aju. She's not a retard. Why can't she understand what we're saying? Aju, we're here to ask for your help. You should also say something. With a brother like Baijuan, you shouldn't be too stupid. Even if you're adopted, you should at least have some intelligence. Little Aju still did not say anything, but the small melon seed in her hand was put aside by her. Chapter 1154. Yanqin seemed to be very wronged. Forget it, she is indeed a little too young. Even if she made a mistake, maybe she doesn't even know what the mistake was. Baijuan dotes on his sister. I'll wait for 2 more days. As she said this, Yanqin lowered her eyes and said to the little girl, Little Aju, Sister Yanqin doesn't mean to blame you. I'm here to ask for your help. If you want to help me, just nod, okay? Even if she was not familiar with Baijuan, she would still have an explanation. She would say that they broke up because he doted on his sister too much. However, there was one thing that Yanqin did not expect. Little Aju actually looked at her and said clearly, Benefactress, you are not Baijuan's girlfriend. Baijuan said that day that you always lie like this. Once or twice is fine, but if you say too much, it will make people very angry. Yanqin's expression changed when she heard this. She looked at Aju with a fierce gaze. Why are you so insensible? Yanqin sneered. I am indeed very angry that you are clinging to your brother, but I have endured all of this. We had a disagreement because of you, and my first reaction was to come and apologize to you. I really underestimated you. How could a child like you have so many thoughts? You even said that I was lying. That's enough. When the 2 girls who followed her heard Yanqin's words, their anger also rose. They did not know if it was because they had watched too many TV dramas or something else. They thought that they were good at sex, but in fact, every time they did something, they were bullying others. Moreover, birds of a feather flock together in this world. A group of girls who competed every day about the brand of their clothes and the kind of car their family drove naturally did not feel that there was anything wrong with them, making things difficult for a child. If you weren't Baijuan's sister, I would really want to teach you a lesson. The person who said this was a very tall girl standing behind Yanqin. She was quite beautiful, but she looked like she was not to be trifled with. When the girls in the class saw this scene, they secretly glanced at the boys behind them. After the boys received the order, they immediately slipped away from the back door. There was still some time before class. The 2 junior high school students stood at the door and did not leave. They looked at Aju with heavy eyes. Yanqin's eyes were red the whole time, as if she was not responsible for these things. She was completely wronged. I say, little brat, are you really not going to say a single word? The girl sneered. We're afraid of Baijuan, not you. Look, when your brother is gone, how are we going to deal with you? I hate you brats the most. The 2 of them were originally fine, but they were messed up by you. Do you know how much Yanqin likes Baijuan? You don't even know how to make a sound. Is there really something wrong with your brain? I also think there's something wrong with her brain. Didn't you hear what she said just now? She actually called us benefactors. Another girl laughed with disdain. What's wrong with him? Could it be that the Bai family brought in a little retard? Little Aju really didn't like to talk nonsense with others. The child had not made a move, because he was worried about damaging the office supplies in the classroom. But the other party kept on talking, making her really angry. Willy Buddha had said that when one couldn't bear it anymore, there was no need to bear it anymore. Little Aju did not stop either. As soon as the two of them finished speaking, she made a move. Her small fist carried the wind, and directly hit a female student in the stomach. When the other tall girl saw this, she immediately shouted, "You damn child, I didn't hit you, but you still want to take a mile when I give you an inch." As she shouted like this, she was about to pick up little Aju. On the other side, Bai Juan, who had just changed classes, was being followed by Li Hailu. Little gangster Li was still apologizing very sincerely. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have taken them to the Bai family. I really didn't think so much at that time. I just saw that Yin Qin usually played with us in the game. Her skills were not bad, and she didn't directly attract you like other girls. I thought she was harmless, but I didn't expect her to have so many thoughts. This time, it's my fault for wanting to chase after a girl. I apologize. Don't change your class. If you change your class, whose homework should I copy? I changed classes because I wanted to be closer to little Aju." Bai Juan turned around and looked at him slowly. "As for the homework, you can think of a way yourself." Li Hailu grabbed Bai Juan's hand. "Brother, this matter is easy to discuss. It's just that little Aju wasn't angry with me last time, right? Even if she was angry with me. What does it have to do with you?" Bai Juan's voice was very indifferent. Li Hailu completely understood Master Bai's possessiveness. Yes. You are little Aju's brother. I was picked up. I was just afraid that the child would be affected. If little Aju was a little sad, I, Li Hailu, would be the first to make them unhappy. Damn it, you want to use me as a gun? Alright, Aju and I are fine. Bai Juan put down his school bag. You should be more careful in the future. After all, we came from the courtyard. Some people, and some things should be considered by themselves. Although Li Hailu was not as smart as Shaolin, he still had a beast-like intuition. He knew very well what Bai Juan was referring to. In their circle, the people they nurtured were either flashy or low-key, especially for those who took the initiative to befriend them. They had to understand the other party's character. That way, they wouldn't be taken advantage of. There were too many temptations around them, so they were destined to know more than those who came from ordinary families. He had seen some brothers in high school who had already started to go to nightclubs. Last time, someone who wanted to ask his family for help had actually given him that kind of card. Did he, Li Hailu, look like a person who would forget his friends when he saw women? Humph. He would not be like that. Why don't I change classes too? I think there are fewer girls in this class. It's quiet. Li Hailu seemed to have suddenly grown up. He turned his head and said to Bai Juan. Bai Juan was about to speak when he saw two third-grade primary school students running over with sweat all over their faces. Even their breathing was heavy. Brother Bai, we finally found you." Bai Juan recognized that these two boys were Aju's classmates. He immediately frowned. "What's wrong?" "Three girls from your junior high school came and surrounded little Aju. One of the girls seems to be your girlfriend, Brother Bai. They insisted that little Aju come over to find Brother Bai and speak up for that person. Little Aju didn't agree, so they..." Before the little boy could finish speaking, Li Hailu heard a loud bang in his ear. The stool in front of him was kicked out by someone. Chapter 1155. When he looked up again, he saw that Bai Juan had already rushed out of the classroom. His tall and straight back was mixed with an anger that was difficult to ignore. Li Hailu felt that things were bad. When Bai Juan was angry, he was really a player who could beat people to a pulp. Shouldn't he inform Shaolin? But damn it, was there something wrong with Yin Qin's little girl? Was she so bored that she went to find trouble with little Aju? Not only would Bai Juan get angry, But Li Hailu himself was also angry. In the end, his anger defeated his rationality. Li Hailu rolled up his sleeves and rushed out like a bullet like Bai Juan. At the entrance of the 3rd years, the tall girl who made a move felt her outstretched arm being pulled by someone. Then there was a creak. It was as if something had broken. In an instant, a heart-wrenching pain spread from her arm to her entire body. The tall girl was a sports student. She originally thought that she could let the child know how powerful she was by casually making a move. Yin Qin's goal was the same. She brought these 2 people here to make little Aju afraid. She had never thought of making a move on little Aju. After all, she was Bai Juan's sister, so she did not dare to do anything to little Aju. What she wanted was for little Aju to see so many grown-up students like them, and know what rules were. However, Yin Qin never expected that the child would actually beat someone up without saying anything. The tall girl was in so much pain that her face was pale. She wanted to shake the little girl off, but the little girl was as heavy as 1,000 pieces of gold. Not to mention shaking her off, she could not even lift her up. She could be considered a tyrant in school. After all, no one dared to provoke the sports students. But today, she actually fell into the hands of a child. The most common way for girls to fight was to pull hair and scratch blindly without any pattern. In school, those people who formed gangs always liked to do this. In little Aju's eyes, these moves were simply not moves. With a small flying kick, she completely crippled the tall girl. The 3rd-year students were dumbfounded by what they saw. Although they had always known that their little class belle had boyfriend power and was stronger than the boys, she could still hold on when others came to find trouble with her. But they had never known that the little class belle actually knew kung fu. When little Aju saw that the girl had fallen, she ran over and dragged the tall girl out of the room. The students didn't understand. Wait, class belle, where are you going? Little Aju raised her little face and said very seriously, "It's almost time for class to start. I want to drag her a little further away, so that the teacher can't see us." The students, destroy the evidence. To be honest, little class belle, after you beat people up in the temple, did you also deal with them like this? Too bad. Little Aju was very strong. She dragged one with her left hand, and one with her right hand. It was as if she was dragging a sack instead of a person. Back then, little Aju had dragged her martial nephews along like this in the temple. Therefore, little Aju was good at dragging people along. The tall man's voice was hoarse. "We are not only your brother's friends, but Yin Qin is also your brother's girlfriend. How could you treat us like this? Do you think we don't dare to touch you? How many times have I said it? Little brother doesn't have a girlfriend." Little Aju let go halfway and squatted down. She frowned and reasoned with the tall girl. "In the future, you are not allowed to say that a girl is little brother's girlfriend. If you do, he will break the precepts. If he breaks the precepts, he won't be fated with Buddha. I want to help Buddha Willie keep an eye on little brother. If any of you dare to approach little brother in the future, I will break your legs." Hearing this, the 3rd-year students all trembled. Little class belle can't be serious, right? When has little class belle ever been fake? Only now do I realize how gentle little class belle was to me in the past. Is it really possible to break someone's legs? What's impossible about little class belle? She's only 6 years old. This has nothing to do with age. Do you remember the last time you provoked her, and she pushed you away with one hand? Don't mention that dark history. You won't be able to find a girl. The child acted as if she did not hear the discussions around her. After she finished speaking, she continued to drag the 2 people out. There was a little white cat on her head, and the cat's tail wagged behind her head. "Little class belle, where are you dragging them?" someone asked in a hurry. The main reason was that one of them had a broken arm. Being dragged like this was really a fate worse than death. The child said without turning her head. "Downstairs in the garbage dump." The 3rd years were speechless. When Bai Juan ran over, little Aju had not yet reached the stairs. The child was standing in the corridor and dragging people. Bai Juan knew that little Aju had always liked to drag people who had been beaten up. However, he did not care about these things anymore. As soon as he reached the place, he picked up the child. He held her small face with his fingers and looked left and right. There was a red mark that was neither deep nor shallow on her chin. If one did not pay attention, one would not be able to see it at all. Master Bai was immediately furious. He immediately pulled the tall girl up from the ground. You did it. That handsome face emitted a chilling aura. The tall girl could not help but shiver. She had never seen Bai Juan angry before. After all, she had a good upbringing. But now, she really regretted coming here. Zhang Mina, I don't hit women, but you remember this. Don't you like to bully people in groups? I'll let you have a taste of what it's like to be bullied. At that time, the tall girl did not understand the meaning of Bai Juan's words. After she recuperated and entered the sports field again, the few people on the same team would always intentionally or unintentionally hit her with a basketball. Once she resisted, they would all surround her. This was called bullying. Bai Juan had stayed in the temple for a year, but he had not really gotten into any relationships. When he did things, there was only one word to describe it, and that was ruthless. Li Hailu was most afraid of this. He hurriedly rushed over and saw Bai Juan reach out and throw Zhang Mina aside. Then he approached Yan Qin. Yan Qin was still crying and said, Bai Juan, why are you like this? Why are you so fierce to us without asking clearly? Bai Juan sneered. Ask clearly? I really don't know what happened. I only know that my sister is in class. You came to find trouble with me. What else do I need to ask? Master Bai, the teacher is here. Li Hailu whispered behind his ear. Bai Juan's face was expressionless. Yan Qin and Zhang Mina also saw the teacher's figure in the distance. One after another they started to cry. They really looked like they had suffered a great grievance. Chapter 1156. In fact, it wasn't just the teachers. Even the school leaders had come. The dean first saw Yan Qin cry. Then he looked at Bai Juan, who was standing beside her with a cold face. He immediately felt that the situation was a little difficult to handle. Bring her to the office first, the dean said to the third-grade teacher. The director of teaching said as he turned to the head teacher of the third grade. Let the children go back to class. You can come back after they're done. Such a thing had never happened in City Number 1 high school before. Class started, and there were still students making a ruckus outside. Inform the parents of these students, and ask them to come to school. After the dean finished his instructions, he rubbed his forehead and looked at Yan Qin, who was still crying. His mind was in a mess. The head teacher of the third grade listened to the children in her class talk about what had happened. She basically knew what was going on. Hearing that the little darling in her class had been bullied, the head teacher was unhappy. Ever since she took over this class, the children in the class had been especially obedient. Those who were not obedient had also been tamed by little Aju. Usually the children were very sensible, although she liked to use force. However, she would only make a move when others provoked her. For the rest of the time, she ate when she was told to eat, did homework when she was told to do, and did not make a ruckus in class. This was already very rare for a 6-year-old child. Why did the first-grade students come to her class? She had to ask clearly about this matter. The head teacher was also a hot-blooded person. After hearing the children's chatter, she immediately turned around and left the classroom. No one could bully her students. In the dean's office, there were a total of 5 students sitting there. Zhang Mina was sent to the school doctor for emergency treatment. Yan Qin and another girl were sitting in their seats and crying. Their hair was still stained with dust, and they were in a very sorry state. Li Hailu was also sitting there looking sloppy. Bai Juan was holding the child, and little Aju was sitting in Bai Juan's arms obediently. She turned her head to look at Li Hailu. Li Hailu had just made a face at her. The office door was pushed open. It was Zhang Mina's mother. She came the fastest, and there was an unconcealable anger on her face. Who did it? Who beat my daughter up like that? Who did it? The Zhang family was a business family, and had a good family background. Zhang Mina's mother had always bought whatever her daughter wanted. What he usually taught his daughter was that if something happened, it would be fine as long as they could settle it with money. She knew her daughter very well. She was beautiful and had a good figure. She was also very popular in school. After receiving the news that her daughter had been beaten, she did not even listen to the teacher's words and rushed over. The teaching director stood beside her and said patiently, "Madam, please listen to my explanation first. This is what happened." "I don't care what happened." Zhang Mina's mother interrupted the dean with a sharp voice. "Who did this? Come out now." Little Aju did not wait for others to react. She immediately jumped out of Bai Xuan's arms. With the little white cat on her head, she said with her eyes wide open, "I beat him up." Zhang Mina's mother turned around abruptly. Just as she was about to get angry, her throat was blocked. This such a young child. How could her daughter not even be able to beat a child? Zhang Mina's mother did not know what to say. She could only raise her head and look at Bai Xuan, who was behind little Aju. "You did it, right? Why was it so difficult to communicate with this person?" She had already said that she was the one who beat her up. Why did she have to look for little brother? Little Aju frowned and repeated seriously, "I beat her up. It has nothing to do with little brother." Aju. Then he slowly stood up and looked at Zhang Mina's mother. The aura he exuded did not match his age at all. "Madam, since you don't care about the process, then wait for the lawyer's letter on behalf of your daughter. Your daughter colluded with her classmates to blackmail and kidnap my sister. This is campus violence and it is also a crime. You seem to be very surprised. It's useless for you to look at our director." Zhang Mina's mother did not expect that a young man would suddenly come up and talk about the law with her. She was completely dumbfounded. Not to mention that Zhang Mina's mother was a little overwhelmed. Even the director of the teaching office and Li Hailu were surprised by Bai Xuan's words. Especially Li Hailu, he looked at his master Bai in shock. Why didn't he know that Bai Xuan had this idea? No wonder he was so obedient just now and came with the teachers. Even the Bai family's power was useless. To be able to come up with such an excuse, their master Bai was really cool. What blackmail and kidnapping? The female student who had been crying beside him was stunned. "We didn't. We just wanted to warn your sister to stay away from you." When Bai Xuan heard this, his smile became even colder. "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to tell my sister to stay away from me?" When the director of the teaching office heard the female student's words, he also felt that it was funny. This child's thoughts were really strange. What kind of logic was this? No wonder Bai Xuan was angry. However, the female student did not think that she was wrong and looked at Yan Qin. Yan Qin signaled her not to say anything else. However, there were adults present. The eye contact between these junior high school students could not escape the eyes of others at all. Bai Xuan's voice was still very calm. "Now the problem is very clear. They are the ones who are looking for trouble." "What do you mean by looking for trouble?" A crisp voice rang out from the door. It was filled with arrogance and coldness. "Little friend, don't you think you're exaggerating a little too much?" Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw a woman standing in the backlight. She was wearing an open-necked white suit and a pair of oversized sunglasses. There were two people standing on her left and right. They looked like her assistants. Their auras were very strong. The person who came was Yan Qin's mother. Her name was Ruan Xian, and she was a relatively famous female celebrity in the industry. Because she had acted in a few television dramas, she did have some fans. The director of the teaching office had a headache because of this point. Yan Qin's mother's identity was there. If this matter was not handled well, Ruan Xian's Weibo post would be unimaginable what kind of impact it would have. This was because the influence of celebrities was too strong. Even if the other party was in the wrong, no one could predict what the public opinion would become in the end. Forced to think, the director of the teaching office smiled and went up to her. "Ms. Ruan, please take a seat first. Let's hear what's going on before we deal with it." Chapter 1157. I know my daughter's personality the best. Ruan Xian took off her glasses and blew on them. She also smiled and said, "She's not a child who takes the initiative to cause trouble. Someone must have lied. Yan Qin was beaten up, and this matter won't be over. Please investigate carefully and give me an explanation. I'm really busy here. I still have a scene to shoot in a while, so I'll take Yan Qin away first." The head teacher of the third grade heard this sentence as soon as she arrived. She was so angry that she couldn't help but say, "Ms. Yuan, are you saying that all the students in my class are lying? Little Aju is the youngest student in our class. Ms. Yuan, as you can see, she is only 6 years old. A 6-year-old child. If no one provoked her, she would only obediently stay in the classroom. Your daughter brought 2 senior students to our 3rd grade, which is not in accordance with the school rules. Teacher, your student hit someone. You're also responsible for it." Wan Xian's expression turned cold. "You are the head teacher who can't control your own class. Shouldn't you first reflect on yourself before speaking?" The head teacher had never seen such a person who could distort the truth like this. She was so angry that her fingers were clenched tightly. Wan Xian turned her head and glanced at little Aju. Besides, just because she's young doesn't mean that she's a good person. Who raised such a child with such a bad upbringing? Hearing this woman mention Aju, Master Li was unhappy. His eyes were burning with anger. Wan Xian looked extremely elegant. She wanted to leave with Yan Qin. Baijuan blocked her way. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he was extremely cold. "Since Ms. Yuan wants to talk about education, then I will have a good chat with Ms. Yuan. I have nothing to do with your daughter, and I have never admitted that she is my girlfriend. Anyone with a little face would not spread such rumors in school. Not only did they say that I have a close relationship with her, but they even found my sister and warned her to stay away from me. So this is how a popular actress teaches her daughter. It can be considered an eye-opener for me. However, there is one thing that Ms. Yuan and I have the same idea. This matter will not be over." Yan Qin saw that Baijuan had changed, so she quickly pulled Baijuan's hand. "Baijuan, that's not what my mother meant. Besides, your sister is too clingy to you, that's why I..." Swish. Baijuan shook off her hand. There was only a thick chill on his thin lips. Now that he had explained the situation, everyone present knew what had happened. Wan Xian was completely embarrassed. She had never thought that her daughter would be the one to throw herself at him. She could feel the gazes around her. For a celebrity, she simply couldn't stand ordinary people looking at her, as if she was a joke. Wan Xian really couldn't control her temper anymore. She said to the assistant beside her, "What are you waiting for? Bring Yan Qin along. Let's go." When the 2 assistants heard the whole story, they were indeed stunned. When they came to their senses, they immediately took Yan Qin away. Wan Xian, on the other hand, turned around and glanced at Baijuan. There was a subtle warning in her words. "Little friend, there are some things that you can't say carelessly. No matter what, you're the ones who beat people up. This can't be changed. If you want to file a lawsuit, you can directly send a lawyer's letter to the Yin family and see what the court will decide." After saying this, Wan Xian flipped her long hair and left. Master Li was so angry that he laughed. "Isn't she just saying that because she thinks that Yen is in the judicial department? Master Bai, this female celebrity really doesn't know you. It's good that her husband knows me." Baijuan was not in a hurry. He reached out and picked up the child with the small melon seeds in her mouth. He said to the 2 directors, "Thank you for defending Aju just now." The director of the teaching office did not know what to say. He was only worried that the matter would continue to cause trouble. However, Master Li knew that if Baijuan said that it would not end, then it would really not end. In addition to that female celebrity's attitude, this matter would probably be troublesome. Most importantly, there was a scar on Aju's face. This was probably what Baijuan could not tolerate the most. For the afternoon class, Yan Qin's mother asked the assistant to apply for leave for her daughter. When Wan Xian came to school, she could indeed meet many people who knew her. The main reason was that she was currently participating in a variety show outside the house. That show was very popular in the country, and was also very popular. Therefore, there were naturally more people who were fans of her. She maintained the elegance and glamour of a celebrity. When she saw anyone, she would not smile and wave her hand. It was not until she got into the nanny van that Wan Xian took off the sunglasses on her face. Her face was full of anger. Yan Qin was still crying in the car. Her shoulders were twitching. It was not easy for Wan Xian to get pregnant. She simply gave her daughter whatever she wanted. Now that she saw Yan Qin like this, The anger in her heart could not be suppressed anymore. She tilted her head and said to the two assistants, "Go and ask who the boy who dared to talk to me like that in the office just now is. Ask the lawyer to make a lawyer's letter and send it directly to his house. My daughter is not someone they can bully just because they want to." When Yin Qin heard that her mother was going to fall out with Bai Xuan, she was the first to object. "Mom, why do you want a lawyer's letter? Bai Xuan is not wrong. The one who is wrong is that sister of his. She is not his biological child to begin with, but she insisted on sticking to Bai Xuan. Bai Xuan played well with me before, and it was all because of her." The assistant listened silently at the side and did not say anything. The little boy in the office had already made it very clear. His attitude towards Yin Qin was also full of disgust. How could he play well with Yin Qin? They were indeed used to seeing celebrities in this circle who inverted black and white. But this was the first time they had seen someone who liked to make up groundless things at such a young age. No wonder that good-looking boy hated this little miss so much. The two assistants looked at each other and did not say anything. After all, although Yuan Xian always looked like a caring and generous person in front of outsiders, in private, she was very harsh when she treated her assistants. It was just like how she always liked to eat vegetarian and pray to Buddha, but her heart was not kind. Okay. Mommy won't touch that boy." Yuan Xian coaxed her daughter. "It's true that he wasn't the one who hit her. No matter how young his sister is, it's her fault that she beat her up so badly." When Yin Qin heard her mother's words, she still couldn't stop crying. "I don't want to see her in school again. Tell her to get lost. Don't cry. You're crying so much that Mommy's heart hurts." Yuan Xian reached out and carried Yin Qin in. She patted her back. "Mommy will definitely settle this matter for you." Yin Qin lay in her mother's arms and felt very wronged. "I want Bai Xuan to be my boyfriend. Mom, I've already said it. Now that things have turned out like this, how can I still go to school? Everyone will definitely think that I'm bragging. Tell Bai Xuan for me that I don't have to make him apologize. As long as he's with me, we won't make things difficult for his sister. We'll let his sister stay in school." Chapter 1158. Yuan Xian's two assistants were sitting in the driver's seat, and the other in the passenger seat. When they heard these words, they couldn't help but shake their heads. This idea was really strange. However, Yuan Xian felt that her daughter's request was not too much. The other party was wrong to begin with. If her daughter didn't like him, then no matter how outstanding his appearance was, he wouldn't be worthy of her daughter. "Little Qin, I won't care what you want to do. However, you're too young now. You have to be careful when you're in a relationship. Don't let others catch you." Yuan Xian smiled faintly and pinched her nose. "I'm a celebrity. You don't know why some people are so nice to you. However, those children in number 1 high school should be from good families. It's mainly because of your father. Our Yin family is not something that anyone can climb up just because they want to." Yin Qin wiped her tears. "I know. The Bai family is also very rich. Just look at Bai Xuan and you'll know. He's different from all the boys in our class. The teachers all like him very much." Yuan Xian smiled and said, "Okay, I'll listen to little Qin. I'll get someone to do it immediately." Yuan Xian thought that no matter how rich the Bai family was, they could not compare to the Yin family's connections. There was no need for her to tell her husband such a small matter. She got the Bai family's contact information from the school and directly called them. The person who answered the phone was none other than Chief Bai. Originally, he was not supposed to answer this call. Under normal circumstances, Auntie Wang was there. However, today, Chief Bai suddenly received a notice from the school saying that Bai Xuan had gotten into a fight in the school, so he returned to the courtyard. When the school director talked about this matter, his attitude had always been very low. The Bai family had always kept a low profile, and Bai Xuan did not clearly state his identity when he entered the school. However, since it was arranged by the Xiao family, the school director immediately thought that the other party's background was not simple. Looking at the usual interaction between the young master of the Xiao family and Bai Xuan, he was even more certain of this point. She originally thought that the other party was a second-generation official. When Chief Bai received the call, she finally figured it out. It turned out that Bai Juan had a red background. Wan Xian did not know about this at all. The moment she came up, she was very rude to the old man. After telling him the request, she even asked the old man to consider it carefully. She said that it was just a quarrel between children. As a parent, he had to be reasonable and not make things too serious. Old Master Bai had been in power for so long, but he had never heard such a funny joke. Then tell me, what are your conditions? After saying this, Elder Bai pressed the speaker button. Bai Juan was sitting opposite Old Master Bai and was playing chess with him. Hearing the arrogant tone on the other side, the youth's eyes turned cold. He directly turned on his phone and recorded the other party's words without missing a word. Then he handed it to Adjutant Zhang. Send this recording to Yin Zhenghua. Tell him that my grandfather wants to ask him what the Bai family did wrong to be threatened by the Yin family. At the same time, tell him that the Bai family has always strictly prohibited marriage and girlfriends. Some third-rate actresses who rely on sleeping with others want to enter the Bai family. Not to mention my grandfather, he can't even get past me. Also, remember to ask Yin Zhenghua if he's in charge of the judiciary. Where did he put my Uncle Tang? Adjutant Zhang looked at the phone in his palm and felt that his young master's actions were so cool that he had no friends. Old Chief Bai laughed heartily. Just do as my grandson says. Go ahead. Yes. Adjutant Zhang saluted. Chief Bai saw that Bai Juan's face was still cold, so he asked tentatively. The news I received was that a Jew beat someone up. Shouldn't be beaten up? Bai Juan's eyes were cold. It's only right to beat them up. Chief Bai put down the teacup. Bai Juan, grandfather has said before that your temper is not good. You are too protective of the child. Bai Juan paused and said indifferently, my temper is indeed not good, but grandfather, there's one thing you're wrong about. Of course, I have to protect my child. Chief Bai smiled. It's good to have someone who can protect you. It seems that you've already walked out of that plane crash. Bai Juan did not say anything. Chief Bai stood up and reached out to touch Bai Juan's head. When he thought of his proudest son, his eyes were a little red. What happened back then was not your fault. Everyone has their own fate. Your father definitely doesn't want to see you like before. Now that little Aju is with you, grandfather can be at ease when I'm guarding outside. Thank you, grandfather. Bai Juan lowered his eyes. I know what to do as a member of the Bai family. What you're worried about won't happen. I will protect the Bai family well, and won't let my temper destroy it. Chief Bai was really gratified. He nodded. Just as he turned around, he saw a little girl in pajamas holding a round watermelon and looking at them at the door. Chief Bai smiled. Our little Aju is really getting cuter and cuter. Where did you get these pajamas? Little brother bought it for me. Little Aju ran over and hugged the big watermelon. Grandfather, eat the watermelon. I secretly hid this in the closet in my room. Auntie Wang didn't even know. Old Chief Bai laughed and pointed at her. You little foodie. However, the Bai family did love to eat watermelon. Old Master Bai was even more so. When they were young, they could laugh for several days after eating a mouthful of watermelon. This was perhaps the habit of several generations of soldiers. No matter how rich they were still most reluctant to part with the bitter days back then. The Bai family's upbringing had always been simple and generous. Therefore, the children they raised were not like other children at all. Even though they were elegant, their lives were very simple. The three of them cut an iced watermelon and ate it around the table. It was a very happy thing. The joy of a family was just that. Little Aju still had a cat on her head. After handing the watermelon to Chief Bai, she handed her own piece to Bai Juan, meaning that she wanted Bai Juan to feed her. Bai Juan held it for her with a faint smile. After talking to Chief Bai for a while, he fed little Aju a bite. Little Aju's eating made people have an appetite. Her cheeks were puffed up, and her eyes were big. Chief Bai looked at this scene thoughtfully. Although the Bai family's upbringing was to dote on the children, wasn't his grandsons doting too much? Bai Juan noticed Chief Bai's gaze and raised his eyebrows. Grandfather, what's wrong? Continue eating the watermelon. The children were still young. You must be thinking too much. Anyway, his mission for this period of time had ended. He should not be transferred out again this month, so he could observe more closely. Chapter 1159. After old Master Bai made up his mind, he began to call his old friends in the courtyard. He needed help to keep an eye on things with him. Moreover, he and old man Xiao had yet to decide the winner. The Xiao family did not have a granddaughter, but they had 3 brats. When the time came, old man Xiao would prick him again, and he would carry a Jew out. That's right, old Master Bai was a fanatic who showed off his granddaughter. When the Li and Xiao families received old Master Bai's call, they rushed over. Who asked old Master Bai to say that there was something fun to watch. They brought their grandsons along as well. After all, they were all playing together. When Master Li heard that his grandfather was going to bring him to the Bai family, he was punished by his father to stand, but he instantly perked up. He put away his toy pistol and carried his school bag. He threw a sentence to his father, saying that he was not coming back to sleep, and left. Master Li's father was so angry that he chased him all the way. His father's only wish now was not world peace, but to stuff Master Li into his mother's stomach and let him be reborn. When the 3 old men met, they would either discuss serious matters or compete with each other. Others were competing to see who was more powerful. But these 3 were basically competing to see who could give birth to more children. In the past, old Master Bai was always lagging behind by a lot. Now that old Master Bai had a granddaughter, he was the absolute winner. The Xiao and Li families were looking forward to having a granddaughter, but it was also strange. They gave birth to a brat, and every one of them had a penis. They had always believed in one sentence, which was that boys had to be raised crudely. Therefore, it was not easy for Bai Juan to grow up to be so polite. Xiao Lin had his mother to hold him back, so he was not too rough. The roughest one was Master Li. When they saw Bai Juan, the children ran upstairs for a while, allowing the 3 grandfathers to pinch them. As soon as they entered the room, Master Li asked, "How's the Yin family? What's with Grandpa Bai's attitude? Do you think it's not good to touch them now?" Xiao Lin was not there at that time, but he heard about the situation. Is there something wrong with Yin Qin's brain? There's no one else who can be so infatuated. She just feels that little Aju is always following Master Bai, so she feels unbalanced. If the Yin family is gone, she should be balanced. Bai Juan put down the English book in his hand and threw the phone in his hand to his 2 friends. "What is this? Recording?" Xiao Lin tilted his head to open the thing and heard the threat from the Yin family. Little gangster, Li had an expression of disbelief on his face. Grandpa Bai answered the phone? Yes. The corners of Bai Juan's mouth curled up. I asked Vice Commander Zhang to send the same recording directly to the Yin family. Didn't the other party want to compete with their background? Then I'll compete with him. Brilliant. This move of yours is really brilliant. After what Master Bai did the Yin family still have a way out? Not to mention the Tang family. Even the judicial department would want to talk to Miss Yin after hearing this recording. Wasn't it obvious that he wanted to use his status to suppress others? If Mr. Yin heard this recording, he would definitely regret marrying such an unlucky wife. Li Hailu originally thought that Bai Juan's personality had become gentler in the past year. He did not expect that Bai Juan was even more ruthless than before. Moreover, this time, he was not as ruthless as he was back then. Not only could he directly take a person's life, but he could also not cause the slightest bit of trouble. Xiao Lin listened from the side and smiled. If it were him, he would not have thought that Bai Juan would be so thorough. However, Xiao Lin was most concerned about the child. Is Aju okay? She's fine. Aju had been listening to the few people behind the door. Now that she heard her name, she jumped out. Her lotus root-like little hands patted her small belly. It was probably because she had eaten too much watermelon. Her small belly was bulging, but her face was as serious as ever. Brother Xiao Lin, don't worry. They can't beat me. Xiao Lin was indeed relieved about this, because even Xiao Lin himself might not be able to beat Aju. Brother Xiao Lin brought you a little bean. It was freshly steamed by our auntie. Aju's eyes lit up when she heard about food. However, Bai Juan blocked Xiao Lin's hand. She just finished eating watermelon, and her stomach is still full. If she eats more, she won't be able to digest it at night. As he said that, he turned the lunch box in Shaolin's hand and pressed it into little gangster Li's palm. Me. Li Hailu really wanted to say that he had just had dinner too, okay? Besides, everyone in the villa knew about Aj's appetite. Even if you fed her 2 big steamed buns now, she wouldn't have indigestion, let alone 2 little ones. Li Hailu said. Eat. Baijuan only had one word. Little gangster Li no longer had any doubts. He put a bean in his mouth. Damn it, he hated to eat things with bean paste filling the most. Baijuan, you're good. Shaolin raised his head and glanced at the happy little gangster Li. He simply said, Baijuan, I found that you won't let me give a Jew anything I've given her recently. Baijuan did not deny it. He handed him a ballpoint pen made of bamboo in his hand. Your intuition is very right, so don't give it to me anymore. Grandpa brought it back from Yunnan. It's suitable for you to use. Shaolin accepted it and could not put it down. Not bad. I knew you liked it. Baijuan raised his chin. The youth's smile was very beautiful. Little gangster Li was jealous. Why don't I have a share? What do you need a pen for? Baijuan said as he opened his notebook. Some time ago, didn't you always want equipment in the game? I made a set for you. Little gangster Li was so moved that he cried. He hugged Baijuan and called him his brother. Little Aju pushed him to the side forcefully. Beat the mud away. Little brother will feel hot. Little gangster Li really did not want to admit that his martial strength was not as good as a 6-year-old child's. He could only swallow the last bean with tears in his eyes. Shaolin held a pen in his hand and watched this scene with a smile. The Xiao family's situation was very complicated. The people they met were also some social events. Ever since Shaolin could remember, his grandfather had told him that no matter what, the Xiao Li and Bai families had to be tightly tied together. At that time, he did not understand the meaning of this sentence. His thoughts were more gloomy than the average person's. To be honest, he liked to think of many things in a bad way. To put it nicely, this was called preparing for a rainy day and being good at scheming. To put it bluntly, he was only a junior high school student now. With such a sinister personality, it was very difficult to make friends. His mother was an educator. No matter how magnanimous she would still teach him how to deal with people. For some things, once they were exchanged for equivalent value, they would appear to be fake. When he was 3 years old, he moved back from Hainan with his grandfather and moved into the courtyard. Originally, according to his understanding of the future, he would definitely look at the other party's identity when he made friends. He did not need the other party's help, but he had to be wary of others. However, when he met Baijuan and Hailu, everything changed. Chapter 1160. The 3 of them grew up together. From the time they were wearing diapers, they would fight over a toy. However, if the children in the other courtyards dared to bully him, Baijuan and Hailu would be the first to object. Shaolin still remembered that year when Hailu fell into the water. At that time, he was so scared that his hands and feet were numb. The children around him had all run away, but Baijuan refused to leave. No matter what, he had to save Hailu. In the end, he had a fever for 2 whole days. The first thing Baijuan did when he opened his eyes was to make sure that he and Hailu were fine. At that moment, Shaolin recognized that these 2 people were his brothers for life. Moreover, the feeling of being remembered like this was always good. Shaolin lowered his eyes and turned the bamboo pen in his hand. He could not hide his happiness. The 3 old men watched from the outside, full of joy and relief. What could make them happier than the harmony between their children and grandchildren? In the future, the children still had a long way to go. Only by helping each other like this could they be at ease. Among them, only old Master Li was the most careless. Compared to the other 2, not only was his son not long, but he was also confused the entire time. When the time came, how could he be at ease leaving his grandson in the army? Old Master Li gritted his teeth and turned his head to ask, Old Bai, when do you plan to send your son away? Let's talk about it after he graduates from high school. Old Master Bai lowered his voice and gestured for them to go downstairs. Little Aju is still young. If Baijuan leaves, who will take care of her? Although it's a little late to join the army at the age of 18, Baijuan should be able to keep up. Old Master Li nodded. That's fine too. The main thing is to arrange for Baijuan while we old bones are still in position. Don't worry, the two of you. Can't you see that little Juan is a child? He has the ability to lead. Old Master Xiao stroked his beard and said, These 3 children are all sensible. Although Hailu is a little mischievous, he knows that our Shaolin is also a taciturn person. Sometimes, I don't even know what my grandson is thinking. Let's wait and see what they want to do and what they are doing. Vice Commander Zhang stood at the side and listened to the conversation between the 3 big shots. If anyone else heard this, they would definitely be very shocked. Because it was very obvious that this was nothing more than the intention of appointing a successor. There was only one young master in the Bai family. However, the Xiao family was different from the Li family. They had 3 sons, not to mention their future grandsons. However, the 2 of them had already decided on their successors. In other words, the 3 children upstairs would all be extraordinary in the future. Deputy Zhang raised his head and glanced upstairs. He tried his best to calm himself down. However, Wan Xian and her daughter were still waiting for Baijuan to give in. Wan Xian first took Yanqin shopping, then took her to the recording studio. She did whatever she wanted. She was confident that when she returned home, she would receive an apology letter from the Bai family. Wan Xian's husband, Yin Zhenghua, was still busy at work. He didn't expect to see someone from the Bai family. Just as he was about to greet him, the other party raised his hand to stop him. He was dressed in a military uniform. Director Yin, our old master wants you to listen to this. As he spoke, the man clicked on the recording on his phone. The more Yin Zhenghua listened, the paler his face became. In the end, there was no trace of blood on his lips. He hurriedly said, Deputy, is there a misunderstanding? The call was personally picked up by Chief Bai. The recording is also very clear. The girl that the noble lady is talking about is the young lady of the Bai family. The boy that your daughter wants is young Master Baijuan. Chief Yin has seen him before. This recording was sent to me by young Master Baijuan. Young Master still has a copy. I'm not sure who he will send it to. Chief Yin, keep this copy and listen to it properly. Yin Zhenggua's hand trembled so much that he couldn't hold the phone at all. His chest was filled with anger, and there was also an indescribable fear. If such a recording was submitted, even if the Bai family didn't have it, he would definitely be punished. His wife could have provoked anyone, but why did she have to provoke the Bai family? Yin Zhenghua was so angry that he didn't care about having dinner with the other leaders at night. He called Wan Xian in a very bad tone. Where are you? Tell me immediately. Wan Xian was stunned by the roar. Where did you eat? Why are you so angry? I asked you to tell me where you are. Wan Xian listened to Yin Zhenggua's roar on the other end of the phone, and her heart was beating like a drum. After telling her the location, she immediately asked her assistant to hurry home. Yanqin hadn't had enough fun yet. Mom, didn't we say that we were eating outside today? Your father is angry. I don't know why, but let's go home first. Wan Xian was anxious now. All these years, she had a good grasp of Yin Zhenggua's temper. Yin Zhenghua had never been angry with her like today. What was going on? After all, Wan Xian was in the entertainment industry. Her sense of smell was always more sensitive than that of ordinary people. Her intuition told her that something had happened. However, she didn't know which part of the process had gone wrong, so she could only wait anxiously at home. As soon as Yin Zhenghua saw Wan Xian, he threw the phone fiercely at her face. Listen to yourself, listen to what you said. Wan Xian was still smiling. Yin Qin was sitting next to her mother. She was already a junior high school student, so of course, she had her own thoughts. Dad, what are you doing to my mother? Shut up. Yin Zhenghua turned around. I haven't said anything about you yet. Who taught you to throw yourself at a boy when you see one? You even threatened him, and said that as long as he was your boyfriend, you would forgive his sister? Is this what I usually teach you? All the face of our Yin family has been lost by you and your mother. I just like Baijuan. Is that wrong? Yin Qin roared. How am I throwing myself at him? I was openly liking her. Yin Zhenghua was so angry that he felt dizzy. Only when two people are in love with each other is called liking. He has already rejected you so obviously, and you still want to go up to him. If this isn't throwing yourself at him, then what is? It's fine if that's the case, but you even went to find trouble with his sister. Do you know who you've offended? Isn't it just the Bai family? I know that they're very rich. Cheener has also said a thing or two. One Xian pulled her daughter away and softened her tone. So what if they're rich? It's not like our family doesn't have money. Moreover, we still have people. Yin Zhenghua was so angry that his teeth hurt. You're comparing your connections with the Bai family? Is there something wrong with your brain? That's not an ordinary rich family at all. That's the Bai family. Do you know how many soldiers old Master Bai has? You're still competing here. Red roots. One Xian was shocked and took a step back. She had put in a lot of effort in order to enter this circle, so she naturally knew that the toughest people in this circle were still people with red backgrounds. These people were not people that the Yin family could provoke. Chapter 1161. Yin Zhenghua looked at her. Now you know how to be afraid. Why didn't you think about what would happen to me when you called me? What would happen to me if I were to be sent to the higher-ups? Aye. One Xian didn't think too much. After all, with the Yin family's power, who would record such a voice? However, she never expected the Bai family to have such a background. Yin Zhenghua seemed to have lost all hope. After sitting down, he rubbed his hair. I'll think of a way to turn things around and use the old master's connections. That was the only way. If he calmed down and dealt with it, he might still have a chance of survival. However, One Xian didn't think so. She had to win for herself. Subconsciously, she thought of her own influence. The Bai family wasn't an ordinary person, but it was precisely because the Bai family wasn't an ordinary person that they were even more afraid of the pressure of public opinion. She had also thought about it. If the recording was handed over, someone would definitely investigate her husband. If she wanted Yin Zhenghua to be fine, she had to fight back. Since they could investigate her husband, why couldn't they investigate the Bai family? If such a topic was released, she didn't believe that the netizens wouldn't stand on her side. Mom, what's wrong? Why is Dad's expression so ugly? Yin Qin was still asking One Xian. One Xian couldn't care less about her daughter anymore. She took her phone and logged into her Weibo account. In fact, these public accounts were usually kept by the company. Sometimes, when an artist posted a message, an assistant would do it for them. However, there were also times when artists could take the initiative to speak up. One Xian first thought for a moment, then chose a very dramatic photo to accompany her Weibo post. Then she started to type. Although the content was vague and tactful, it was because of her content that her fans felt that she had been wronged. They all left comments on her Weibo asking her what was wrong. After One Xian saw the results, she immediately posted a second Weibo post. It was obvious that her daughter had been beaten up at school. The person who had beaten her was a second-generation heir. In order to protect her daughter, she had called the other party. Her tone was a little impatient, but it was used as evidence to threaten others. Now the other party wanted to use their background to try and discipline her husband. The moment this Weibo post was released, the internet exploded. One Xian already had 2 marketing accounts in the entertainment industry. When she logged into the marketing account and changed the topic, the news of her daughter being beaten up and her husband being framed immediately spread all over the internet. The first to stand out were of course One Xian's fans. Is there any justice in this world? Goddess, don't cry, we will always support you. Find a way to hunt down that guy. What the fuck? He deleted the comments so quickly. Sure enough, he had a powerful background. What about the relevant departments? Such obvious bullying. Shouldn't they come out and do something about it? You still want to frame the Yin family? The Yin family is not to be trifled with, okay? I just want to know who is so arrogant after beating someone up. All of a sudden, Weibo was flooded with comments. Master Li was still at Bai Zhuan's house. The 3 children were having a small meeting and did not listen. He received a call. and said that someone was looking for news about their class, so he quickly went on Weibo to take a look. They want to hunt down little Aju. There should be a special person instigating it. There is already a circle of reporters standing outside the school. They insist that the director and the others announce Aju's enrollment information. It's really too scary. Brotherly, you have to stay at home for the next 2 days. Don't go out. Masterly pulled at his hair angrily. This Wan Xian is really tired of living. When Bai Juan heard his words, he knew that something had happened. He raised his head and looked at him. What's going on? It's probably the public opinion on the internet. Let's go online and take a look first. As Masterly spoke, he opened Weibo with his phone. In fact, Bai Juan and the others had never used Weibo. This was somewhat not in line with the habits of their age, but they really did not play these things very much. The comments on the internet looked extremely vicious. It had to be said that Wan Xian was indeed very capable in some aspects, such as malicious instigation. Bai Juan's beautiful eyes turned cold bit by bit as the comments went on. When Xiao Lin raised his head to look at him, there was nothing but killing intent in his eyes. Hailu, there's one thing you're right about. This Wan Xian is indeed tired of living. Aju was Bai Juan's bottom line. Whoever touched his bottom line meant that Bai Juan had no bottom line in doing things. Xiao Lin, I remember that you have more than 100,000 fans on your game livestream account. Bai Juan slowly raised his hand and pulled up the backup recording on his phone. Go and tell your fans that I will livestream tonight. Li Hailu exclaimed. Are you going to show up? It's such a small matter. Master Bai won't show up for you. Xiaolin also felt that Li Hailu was right. It was really not worth it to break Bai Juan's peaceful life for Wan Xian. Other than a few higher-ups in the school, not many people knew Bai Juan's true background. Once Bai Juan showed up, the things he would have to face in the future would increase. It was impossible for Bai Juan not to know about this. However, Bai Juan still did it. He even told them, Aju's matters are never small matters. What Master Bai had decided to do was usually impossible to change under normal circumstances. The public opinion on the internet had already reached its peak. Wan Xian's name instantly occupied the headlines of all the major news outlets. Her personal value had also increased. Many media outlets wanted to get the first piece of news about her. Of course, Wan Xian had been in this circle for a long time. She would not casually accept an interview from any media outlet. She would only say a few words if it was a media outlet that stood on her side. This way, the meaning of I am a victim was vividly portrayed. In addition, she was a permanent guest host of a variety show, so she had the opportunity to appear in front of the camera. As soon as Wan Xian arrived at the filming location, she was surrounded by the media. Miss Wan, can you talk to us about who tried to frame your husband? We are not afraid of trouble. We just want to let the people know the truth. Wan Xian lowered her eyes. Her face was painted with sickly makeup. I didn't tell you because I was worried that you would be threatened. At least I'm fine now. Goddess. There were a few fans following behind Wan Xian's nanny van. They covered their mouths and cried. Wan Xian nodded at them and passed through the cameras with a mask on. No one saw the smile on her face under the mask. Things went smoother than she had imagined, and it unexpectedly brought her a lot of attention. She had a premonition that this time, she would definitely appear more often. This could not be better. Chapter 1162. When Wan Xian saw that the plan was going well, she was naturally in an indescribable mood. After entering the special dressing room, the smile on her face could no longer be hidden. She sat in front of the dressing mirror and looked at the person in the mirror. Just as she was considering whether she should ask the makeup artist to make her face paler, she heard a few assistants whispering about something. Have you heard? This time, the mystery guest has suddenly changed. Someone changed? Who changed? Although Wan Xian was putting on makeup, she was also paying attention to the news from the outside world. After all, this recording was very important to her. She would not appear in front of the public for nearly a month. in order to let everyone feel the same way. A certain person with a background had really dealt a huge blow to the Yin family. Therefore, the topic of this recording had to be hot enough. If the original mystery guest was suddenly changed, if the status was not high enough, the attention would also decrease. This was really not good news for her. A few assistants were still discussing softly. I heard that it's young master. Young master? That's right, it's our young master with the brother complex. I'm going crazy. Why would young master participate in a variety show? Isn't he filming a movie in England? Anyway, he's back. I saw it all. Young master's face doesn't need makeup at all. It has its own beautifying effect. He's my favorite. This episode will definitely be good. I must get an autograph. One Xian was also very surprised when she heard the word young master. One had to know that although the other party was young, he had already become an international superstar, who was popular both at home and abroad after debuting for 5 years. Putting aside his looks, just his family background alone was enough to crush many people. However, he did not rely on his family background to enter this industry, but his own ability and influence. The relevant websites had done specific statistics. Any one of Bailey Shangxi's Weibo posts could be trending in minutes. This was not something that all celebrities could do. What was even more shocking was that a boy like him would definitely have more fans of his age. However, after the investigation, they found that it was no exaggeration to say that from aunts in their 40s to children of a few years old, there was no one who disliked Bailey Shangxia. Moreover, these people were formed by a rather rational hardcore fan group. The aunties in the fan group were all generous tycoons, not for anything else, but because of the young master's brother control. On the other hand, their show's viewership ratings in China were not low, but it was not so easy to invite Bailey Shangxia to take charge of the show. This was simply a good thing that fell from the sky. One Xian was overjoyed. She felt that even the heavens were taking care of her. She was still worried that there wouldn't be enough topics to talk about when Bailey Shangxia came to participate in the show. It was as if he was helping her. One Xian believed that as long as this episode was done well, and the pressure of public opinion continued to increase, her old yen would definitely not be investigated again. After all, the other party did not have any evidence, and would not investigate to the end over such a small matter. After all, the people on the internet had already started to dig up information about the other party for her. No matter how powerful the Bai family was, they couldn't be more powerful than all the netizens. Therefore, sometimes the identity of a celebrity was very beneficial. One Xian sat up straight with a faint smile and asked the makeup artist to add some foundation for her. Her lip gloss was slightly white, which made it obvious that she had a lot on her mind. 2 people from the production team came over to comfort her. One Xian shook her head to indicate that she was fine, and even considerately told them not to worry. Although there was a filming location, it was not indoors. Right now, the most popular thing in the country was outdoor variety shows. Under normal circumstances, the permanent guests would be asked to do some tasks. The permanent guests in the show all had their own persona. Other than their persona, they could completely rely on themselves to act on the spot. However, everyone in the industry understood that the so-called outdoor variety show also had a script. However, this time, even the director was somewhat excited. He did not expect Bailey Shangxia to come at all. Many of the headlines had to be rewritten, but none of this mattered. Only with surprises would there be viewership ratings. Not to mention that they were live streaming. The director had a feeling that this time, their station would definitely break the previous ratings legend. As soon as the news of Bailey Shangxia's participation was leaked, there was an overwhelming amount of waiting for the live broadcast. After the director arranged for each of the permanent guests to be in their position, he let them wear the special costumes for this episode, and then told them when they should appear. The slogans for this episode had also changed, from real and fake spies to blood-sucking superstars. One Xian stood in her seat. Just as she had thought before, this time, she got more than just a little more screen time than before. Even the standing position and lines had been arranged by the director. She watched as the permanent guests entered one by one in a funny or handsome way. Ruan Xian smiled and said, "Now it's our mystery guests' turn to appear. Who will they be?" At this moment, no one was willing to look away from the screen. Bai Zhuan was preparing for the live broadcast later. Master Li turned on the television. He had to pay attention to Ruan Xian's movements at all times. Little Aju was wearing a set of little tiger pajamas. She walked back and forth, and even squatted down to look under the bed. "Aju, what are you looking for?" Xiao Lin pulled the child up. Little Aju pointed at the top of her head. "Little White is gone." Li Hailu was also surprised. That cat was always with Aju 24 hours a day. How could it disappear? Speaking of which, that cat was quite strong. How could it lie on little Aju's head without being shaken by anything? Could it have run into the yard? Master Li opened the window and looked outside. Little Aju shook her head and said like a little adult, "Little White won't run around. It's not you. Little White is very obedient." Master Li was speechless. "I just made a deduction, but you attacked me personally. You can't play like this. Something must have happened." Little Aju touched her little chin, as if she was confirming her words. She nodded her head in a dignified manner, and the tiger's tail wagged along with her. Bai Zhuan knew how to raise a child. Even if he was going to do a live broadcast, he did not forget to apply medicine for little Aju. Bai Zhuan sat there and hugged the child. He held a cotton swab in one hand, and dipped it in the medicine beside him. His slender fingers held the cotton swab, and applied it on little Aju's face. In fact, it was much easier for Bai Zhuan to gain sympathy than Ruan Xian, because once such a young child was exposed, it would be obvious who was bullying who. But the reason why people were different was because everyone had different bottom lines. First of all, Bai Zhuan would not try to gain anyone's sympathy. Second of all, he would not expose any information about little Aju, let alone let her show her face. He would only uproot people. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.